IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. We are live here on a Monday talking NFL drafts, recapping the 3 days of the event, also some priority free agents that had been signed by Notre Dame, some UDFAs, as well as a rookie minicamp invite. Also showing a 2023 draft prospect got signed by the Washington Commanders, which we'll get into as well. A little bit of a fun one that popped up over the weekend. We're going to start off, though, by Mr. Dallas Golden and talk about the commitment, the 2025 defensive back out of Tampa Bay, Florida, Berkeley Prep to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And by the way, we'll give you a little peek ahead to some 2025 names that you'll know in the NFL draft space for Notre Dame. I know Brian Driscoll has highlighted both sides of the football the last couple days on irishbreakdown.com. And folks might have an interview for you all at the end of the show. So stay tuned. That one is still, if it happens, it happens, but we'll get there when we get there. We'll cross that bridge as it sees fit. Shaun Davis, what's up, man? How are you?
So, Laura, how you doing, man? This was your dream weekend, right? Commitments, NFL draft, scouting. It's nothing better for you.
I mean, it was a good weekend, man. It was a good weekend. It's also a very tiring weekend. I mean, because I was staying up a lot later than I typically do stay up, and I had podcast recaps and written articles, and it was a busy weekend, man. It was busy, though. Did you enjoy the festivities? I don't know how seriously you take the NFL draft in your household. I'm not sure.
Day 1 and 2.
Okay.
After day 1 and 2, I'll flip back and forth every now and then. But it was a pretty good weekend. Good, lots of NBA basketball for the playoffs. Got into a little bit of hockey. Because really, hockey is kind of the best playoff going if you really want to talk about it when it comes to competition. So, yeah. And the White Sox, they actually swept the series. So
they swept the series.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Dude, I saw the
fourth weekend for me.
I saw them play the Phillies like a week and a half ago, and that was one of the worst. That was one of the worst baseball teams I've ever seen in my entire life. So I'm happy to hear. Because I know they have what they got, the Luis Robert kid who's really good, but he's banged up, right? Like, I don't even think he's playing. So yeah,
he's hurt. Yeah, we had to go down to the farm system and bring up Tommy Pham.
I forgot about Tommy Pham, man. Oh, okay, all right. I haven't heard that name in a couple years.
Yeah, the Rays are struggling. Tampa Bay, they're struggling as well, and the White Sox ended up sweeping them. So
It's been weird so far, Shaun. Some Philadelphia Phillies fan, obviously, they got off to a very slow start, and then they have been red hot the last 3 weeks, but yet still can't really make up that much ground on the Braves. The Braves are excellent. It's a little disheartening.
It's crazy. And then you watch the Dodgers couldn't score runs, and then all of a sudden they just get piping hot,
right?
Like they do every year. It is
every year.
The more things change, the more they seem to stay the same. Yep. Yankees are doing their thing. But then the Baltimore Orioles are really good. The Blue, it's going to be a competitive season.
It is, man. I feel like there's a lot. So it's weird. I feel like the parity of Major League Baseball is not great right now. Like, there's a few really good baseball teams. There's a bunch of not really good baseball teams, but that's another conversation for another day, folks. I see some people throwing in some mailbag questions into the chat. Hey, y'all, no mailbag. Okay, no mailbag. But if you want the question answered, please throw in a super chat. We will make sure that we have time. But as you heard by my brief introduction there, we got a pretty jam-packed show today, Shaun. I mean, there might be 5 segments today. I haven't even really thought it out in my head too much yet, man. But it's going to be a long show. It's going to be a long show, especially if we have an interview at the end. So, Shaun, let's start out, though, of course, recruiting hour typically. Obviously mixing in some NFL draft. But we have to start out with Dallas Golden, 2025 defensive back out of Tampa Bay, Florida, Berkeley Prep. 6'1", 165 pounds, 6 foot, 176 pounds, listed between those two numbers on most major recruiting platforms. Committed to Notre Dame, Shaun. He listed finalist. Well, he didn't list finalists. He said on his graphic, it said over schools like Florida State, Georgia, etc. So it's obviously a very healthy list. Listed as a top 100 player by at least 2 platforms. But for me, Shaun, I've been talking about this even before it was kind of foregone conclusion that Dallas Golden was going to end up at Notre Dame. Top 50 player, in my opinion, in this class. I think that kid is dynamic. I would not be shocked if he has another big year as a senior and maybe he goes to an all-star game and shows out. Would not be shocked if Dallas Golden ends up being a 5-star. Like, I think he has that type of upside. So we'll talk about it, man. The 20th commitment for Notre Dame in the 2025 class, and arguably, in my opinion, the best player that has committed to Notre Dame so far in the 2025 class. We'll have that conversation. So initial reaction, Shaun. I know that we talked a couple days ago about that this was going to happen on Sunday, so we had a nice little heads up on it, obviously. But your initial thoughts? Dallas Golden ending up with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Losses can turn into wins. That's my initial thought. Notre Dame lost a 5-star talent from Berkeley Prep. They had him in the class. They initially lost him. And the same programs came after Dallas Golden late in this process and put the pressure on. And Notre Dame this time, with Mike Mickens leading the way, was able to hold on, right? Yep. So we talk about, you might lose a Justin Scott, but you're still trying to get into Chicago. So that turns into Chris Burgess Jr. And then it turns into other kids in 25 and 26. You have to hammer at these programs like Berkeley Prep, IMG, the Chicagoland area. They've done a job, and they're starting to see the fruit, or have seen the fruit, for 4 to 5 seasons in the St. Louis area. Why? Because they took some losses and eventually they won, eventually got a Kyron Williams, and look what it's turned into. And so that's my initial thought. This is the result of hard work and not giving up on talent field programs across the nation. And we see them doing the same thing in California, going after programs that are feeders into schools like USC and Oregon for a long time, and having the audacity to say, even if we take a loss, eventually we're going to end up winning some kids from this program. They believe that. So salute to this staff and the work that they put in with Dallas Golden. And man, we're going to look forward to seeing even more fruit and seeing that they can close this class out and make it, at worst, a top 3 to 5 class.
Yeah. Shaun, it's funny. I remember my first conversation with Dallas Golden via DM when he was a freshman, because he got offered by Notre Dame when he was a freshman in college, okay? I remember talking to him, asking him, because Keon Keeley was committed to the class at that point. And I said, has Keon been recruiting you already, man? Got the offer now. And he had said, paraphrasing, that Keon was just like glowing about Notre Dame, which of course makes it super sad because Keon did not end up with Notre Dame. But hey, man, a little bit of an assist to Keon Keeley, because he laid in some early foundational work on Mr. Dallas Golden and get Notre Dame high on his list. There's no doubt about it. And obviously at the end, we'll have a lot more on, directly from Dallas and maybe from some people from Dallas's family. We'll get there when we get there, though. Okay, we'll get there. But obviously the authenticity of Notre Dame, the longevity of Notre Dame, the development of cornerback that we're now seeing, because we'll talk about it. Somebody asked in the chat, Shaun, about a comp, and I actually put a post on the message board this morning giving my thoughts, because Brian Driscoll went live yesterday on a live show. But I wanted to put my thoughts out there on Dallas Golden and what I see him as a player. And Shaun, I had compared him in my post to a player who actually was drafted number 40 overall on Saturday in the second round of the 2024 NFL draft. Name is Mr. Cooper DeJean, who is a defensive back out of Iowa that was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, Shaun. And that comparison comes from Simply. And I know it's really funny because Cooper DeJean's a white guy, right? So everyone's like, white defensive back? He can't be athletic. No way. Go look at his track numbers. Go look at his testing numbers. Go watch his film. Cooper DeJean is a heck of an athlete. And you know how we know that, Shaun? Because at Iowa, he played nickel early on in his career, was fantastic. He played outside corner. He's fantastic. Also can play safety. He can literally do anything he wants. He's also a really dynamic punt returner for Iowa as well. Shaun, he could have played offense if he wanted to at Iowa. Like, he's that dynamic of a weapon. And that's where that comparison comes from. What position is Dallas Golden going to play, Shaun? Next to his name, we're going to have a CB next to him because he's going to be playing corner early on in his career. But if Dallas Golden end up starting at nickel as a true freshman, or eventually transition to a playmaking safety down the road as he gains a little bit more mass and strength to his profile, would it shock you? Certainly wouldn't me, man. This is a versatile weapon defensively that I can't wait to see what Al Golden can do with him.
Al Golden gets even more aggressive. He's probably in the lab right now. I know he's preparing for this upcoming 24 season. When you think about once this 25 class finally gets on campus. Think about the level of range and length they have now in that secondary. With the young kids coming in, you're bringing Christian Gray back, you're bringing Jaden Mickey back, who's going to be probably the shortest and the one that doesn't have as much length as everybody else. But then you'll have experience on the back end with the Don Schuler, some of the other guys coming in at 24. We're hearing buzz about Kennedy Urlacher. I don't know how real that is, but they're talking about him making an impact in special teams. And then you start talking about talent. You talk about minutes, all the other young players they have coming in. Even with the loss of Micah Bell, the beat goes on, man. Like the song says from back in the 80s, the beat goes on. And that's what Mike Mickens now, having full control of the secondary. We always felt like, and like they said, you have Carson Hobbs and Leonard Moore. People brought them up in the chat. The length and athleticism and playmakers. Can we say that? All of these kids can tackle double R, whether it's cornerback, safety, DB, nickel. All of them love to play the game. All of them love to tackle. And Dallas Golden is the best of the bunch. That's what makes it super exciting. Yeah. Like when we got the news, it was like, yeah, this is what we dreamed about. And we've been talking about it on previous shows. Like if Notre Dame can close this defensive back class out with Dallas Golden and by chance get maybe another guy, this might be the greatest class, or definitely the greatest secondary class we've seen in Notre Dame in a long time.
Well, Shaun, let's talk about it in two layers. Ready? Let's start with what it is right now, which I would argue it's the best in several years at Notre Dame in the secondary. Okay, let's talk about that. The cornerback class as of today, and obviously we know Notre Dame wants to get to 3 corners at least potentially in this class. So I don't think we're done at cornerback recruiting, and we'll talk about that in the end, the second part of this conversation. But Dallas Golden is now merged with Cree Thomas as the 2 commits in the class. And I think people forget about Cree because Cree's been in the class for a long time, since last summer, right? So he's been there for a while, Shaun. But I really love the comparison between the 2 as corners because they're very different players. Cree is longer than Dallas, smooth, zone heavy, can also play off man. I remember talking to his coach, and his coach obviously coached Benjamin Morrison in college as well. And he kind of said a similar comparison of Benjamin was more explosive than Cree, but Cree's smoother and longer. A guy that can really he kind of like just eases into things, right, Shaun? He had 5 interceptions last year, had at least one pick six along for Brophy Prep. And he is just that kid that is going to go unnoticed by some because he's not as explosive as a couple kids, including Dallas Golden. But man, can turn and run, smooth hips, can change direction, can play inside and out. He could play safety as well, I believe, on the next level with his versatility and his change of direction move. So he's kind of the smooth customer corner, while Dallas Golden, he's an explosive kid at that corner. He's like what I think of as that true, big, physically dense, straight line, just bullets as a defensive back, man. Like I want to put him in off man and tell him to stick his foot in the ground and explode downhill, explode laterally, turn and run. And of course, we know when Dallas Golden gets the football in his hands, special, man. Special football player. You're going to pop on his film, folks. You're going to see him playing wildcat quarterback. You're going to see him play wide receiver. You're going to see him playing running back. He's going to be playing slot back. He's going to be playing wildcat quarterback. He plays a little bit of everything. So first and foremost, Shaun, before we throw the safeties in this conversation, I really love the comparison between Cree Thomas and Dallas Golden because I think they're just such different players, which I think is going to create a very good duo at worst in this class.
You know what I'm interested in, though? Because Notre Dame majority is a field boundary team. Like, okay, you're a boundary corner, you're a field corner. You get a talent like this, does that allow you in certain matchups against certain teams to say, you follow that guy?
Yeah.
If he goes in the slot, he's yours. If he goes to the field, he's yours. If he goes to the boundary, that's the type of talent Dallas Golden has. He really has that type of talent. I'm super excited about his addition. As I said before, Al Golden is probably like, man, the mad scientist right now. Even going into the 24th season with what he has in the secondary, with the talent they're acquiring, And I think they're doing a really good job of acquiring. Mike Mickens always knows what he wants, but I think they're acquiring for the now, but they're also looking forward to the future and how they can get better. And I think they're doing that at all three levels. And I think the recruiting bears that out.
Yeah, I would agree. And because it's a great conversation, Shaun, because I think we're going to hit a point at some point with Notre Dame cornerback play where we can kind of get rid of the field boundary thing in our head and just be like, hey, they can play either side. Like it's a left or right conversation at that point. Because if you ask me, like, all right, so Dallas Golden, Cree Thomas, Cree is more of a field corner, in my opinion. Dallas is more of a boundary corner. But I think that Dallas can do both at a high level. And then if you get and we'll talk about this in a few, if you get a Mark Zachary and you keep, develop Leonard Moore and develop Carson Hobbs, then you're going to be in a situation where, like, who cares who's in the field and who cares in the boundary? Just get them on the field. Like, it doesn't matter anymore, man. It really doesn't matter. So I think that's why recruiting guys like Dallas Golden is so important, because that takes the labels off of guys. We need to stop hyper focusing on corner, safety, nickel labels. We need to stop, because where Notre Dame is going, I'm telling you this, I'm predicting this. I don't know this for a fact, but I am predicting this right now, Shaun. In 2 to 3 years, we're just going to be talking about left, right corner. We're not going to be talking about boundary or field. I don't think that that's going to be a long-term thing. We're seeing it in the NFL right now. The NFL used to play boundary and field a whole lot too. They don't do that anymore, man. They play left and right. Like they just play it, or guys follow each other, kind of to your point earlier in the show. I don't think that we're going to need to hyper focus on the labeling of positions in the secondary that much longer. I think eventually it's just going to be you're a corner that can play everywhere. And I think that is what we are going to see, especially with Dallas, man, because Dallas can go inside and play nickel at a very high level, in my opinion. I think that actually, honestly, it's like a Tyrann Mathieu thing, Shaun. Tyrann Mathieu was a great outside corner at LSU. Great. And I think Tyrann Mathieu would have been a very good corner in the NFL. But you know where the NFL put Tyrann Mathieu before long? Played him at nickel, man, because I could get him involved in every aspect, right? Filling against the run, alley work, blitzing off the edge, like doing all these different types of things, playing man coverage, playing zone, being able to move all over the place. That's where the game's going, in my opinion. I'm excited for it, sir. Now let's throw in the safeties, though. If Notre Dame ended today, guys, they would be short a safety corner number, because they do want to get to 3 in this class. But if you had Cree Thomas, Dallas Golden, behind them, you got Ivan Taylor and Ethan Long. Okay, Ivan Taylor, another kid that I think is a top 100 player, a top 50 player in this class, excuse me. I think that Ethan Long is a bona fide 4-star in this class as well. Shaun, that is a dynamite class, man. If that was just your 4 in most years, you'd be talking about, bro, that's absurd. That's an absurdly talented deep class.
And this is one of those parting gifts that we greatly appreciate our guy Chris O'Leary for, right? And look, who's to say that another kid from the East Coast at the safety position doesn't eventually end up in the class? Now you're really talking about now you're really taking the class to the next level. We'll get to that, in a few moments. But I totally agree with you. I think this is a transformative class for Notre Dame in the defensive backfield. And what I mean by that is not only because I think the work has been put in by Mike Mickens to kind of change the narrative when it comes to defensive back play at Notre Dame. When you see Kyle Hamilton get drafted, when you see this past weekend, we felt like we knew the injuries. And you saw it pretty consistently. Injury concerns defensively in the defensive class got pushed down because of all of the offensive talent.
Even for minute injuries too, Shaun. Cooper DeJean was fully cleared, and there was no long-term implications, and he fell to the second round. Probably would have been a top 25 pick otherwise. Even a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., there was the wide receiver out of LSU, Shaun. He was going to be potentially a top 15 pick in this class, and he fell 8 to 10 spots because of soft tissue stuff that he's had in the
Mhm.
past. So yeah, man, the NFL is taking those just minor injuries a lot more seriously now, because I think especially those soft tissues,
Yeah.
those things tend to linger a little bit, to your point. It's a great
Yeah,
point.
but the narrative has been changing. It's going to continue
Yeah,
to change when Ben Morrison gets drafted. I presume right now, presumably he's a first round pick right now, according to boards right now. But he's going to go first, second day. I feel pretty good stepping out on that limb. And by
sure.
saying that, now you start to open up this thing where the recruiting starts to line up, because the recruiting starts it, but now the increase in seeing the actual fruit
Yep.
impacts the recruiting further. And we're starting to see the fruit of that. That's what we're
Right.
starting to see. Cal Hamilton walk across the stage, Cam Hart walking across, Xavier Watts and Benjamin Morrison next year. Now that has become evident in the recruiting. And now that's going to change how Notre Dame plays and how they're viewed from opposite coaching staffs, right?
Yep.
Because, coaches loved going at the Notre Dame secondary for a long time. For a long time, they're like, yeah, we can take advantage there. Especially at the safeties. Yeah, we can get them at the safety position. And we just came out of a class where a lot of people can point to the Ohio State game, and a lot of people place blame on the safety position. Look there. If
Sure.
we had a playmaker at safety, we win that game. Well, now you're getting a class full of playmakers in
Yes.
the 25 class. So that won't be a problem in the future in big games.
Shaun, you know what's the best thing too? Here's the question that people are going to have after this class. We're like, how are they possibly going to keep all those guys? How are they possibly going to get them all rolling on the field? That's the problem you want to have, guys. That's the problem you want to have. Wow, we have too much talent. We have so much talent that we need to figure it out. That's where you want to be, man. You don't want to be in a situation where it's like, I don't know if we can fill all those spots because we don't have enough good players or enough talent. Notre Dame in the secondary very soon here is going to have so much talent that you're going to say, man, I don't know how they're going to keep all those guys happy. I don't know how they're going to find roles for all those guys. And if they're good enough, they will. Trust me, they will. Notre Dame will find a role for these guys that want to be at Notre Dame and that are extremely talented. That is where you want to be. Now, let's talk about this, Shaun. Let's talk about this real quick. The rest of the class, okay? We have already gotten it out there. Dallas Golden, special talent. Dallas Golden with Cree Thomas, Ivan Taylor, and Ethan Long, dang good secondary class in 2025. But it's not done yet, baby. It's not done yet. Shaun, if you ask me today, who do I still feel good to very good about, okay, in this class? Still feel very good about where things are with Mr. Jadon Blair out of Mount Tabor in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 6'4" safety. Still feel good about where things are with Ben Davis, cornerback out of Indianapolis, Indiana, Mr. Mark Zachary. Notre Dame has a chance to not only get the 4-man haul that we have already talked about that is already committed to the class, a part of the 20 commits in the class, Shaun, but if they get Jadon Blair and they're able to get Mark Zachary, if they get one of those kids, but if they get both of those, Shaun, I don't even know what to think anymore. That is not only, look, flat out. And there might even be a secondary class that's somebody, whether it's 247 or on 3, whoever that ranks higher than that class. But there's no better class in the country than that class, in my opinion. No better. Because the way I look at it is Jadon Blair, top 50 kid. Ivan Taylor, top 50 kid. Dallas Gold, top 50 kid. Mark Zachary, top 100 kid. I think that's pretty safe, right? Ethan Long, Cree Thomas, that is bananas, sir. Absolute bananas.
It's nothing I can add to that. They're like, yo, it's a very good chance that they add 2 more top 100 players to this class, top 150 at worst.
And not that we just feel like okay about Shaun or they have an outside chance, like guys that we legitimately feel good about for Notre Dame right now to varying degrees. I mean, and for people in the chat, again, a couple mailbags are coming in. Super chats today. Super chats. We don't have time for a mailbag. A long show today, folks. We are just in section 1 right now, man. There's going to be like 5 or 6 sections today. All right. So throw the super chats in there if you need a question answered today. And we appreciate you all for the super chats and the continued support. And also, Shaun, there is a chance that if Notre Dame does, so let's say hypothetically speaking, let's say they get Mark Zachary in the class. So their three-man haul would be Mark Zachary, Dallas Golden, and Cree Thomas if they're able to close on Zachary. There is a chance that Notre Dame still pushes for a fourth corner because after the 2024 season, Shaun, there's a chance that Notre Dame's going to be down a couple more corners. I mean, we're already talking about entering the transfer portal this spring cycle right now for a corner because Clarence Lewis just left.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk about the way too early mock drafts that have Benjamin Morrison potentially leaving after this season. I mean, there's going to be that type of stuff happening. You know, how long is Chance Tucker going to be here and all those types of things, right? So Notre Dame's going to have to bring some bodies in the corner class. So not just 3 anymore, right? Not just 3. Notre Dame could go to 4. Yeah. We've been told that there are people on the Notre Dame staff that want to push for 4. And the names that you need to know on that side are you have Tristan Haynes out of the state of Oklahoma, long athletic kid that can play both sides of the football. You have Chuck McDonald out of Mater Dei out in the state of California. And you have Jameer Joseph, who's a local kid to me here in the state of New Jersey as well. So there's a chance, Shaun, that not only could they get 3 safeties in this class, counting Jadon Blair, if they are able to close on Jadon, but they could end up with 4 corners in this class. And I will say this, Shaun, you want another actually, this isn't even a hot take. If you get those 3 corners we talked about, including Mark Zachary, and you're able to land a Tristan Haynes, a Jameer Joseph, or Chuck McDonald, that's dumb, man. I don't have another adjective for it. That is stupid. How could you possibly hold that 4-man class? But you know how you could do it, Shaun? Because what Mike Mickens is doing with those cornerbacks right now, my friend. We know Cam Hart fell in the draft. We'll talk about that, right? We will have that conversation. But Benjamin Morrison, Christian Gray in the pipeline, the other young cats, the Jaden Mickeys, the Carson Hobbs, Leonard Moore coming to campus, some very talented corners. Obviously, they continue to want to play for Mike Mickens, and it is not unrealistic to think that Notre Dame could potentially get at least a 3, but could get to 4 in this class.
I think they will. I think fortune is going to smile upon this class. And I think the momentum and the way that they're riding in the defensive backfield is going to continue. And probably, like we said, I think it's going to supersede our expectations. Where I sit here today and the way I feel about things today, I think the eventual haul is going to supersede our expectations. I think the entire 25 class is going to exceed expectations for a lot of people. Now, I think nationally, I think people are really, because early on people were like, oh, Notre Dame always jumps out. No, that's what they do, right? And most people expected to have some type of rumblings about Deuce at this point, right? And they expected some other things to happen, right? But Notre Dame is still in on big time talent at the linebacker position. They're still in on big time talent at the defensive back position.
Yep.
And the kids, this is a statement being made by the high school kids. That's what I think we need to pick up on. The high school kids are making the statement that Notre Dame is more impactful on the recruiting trail and has a bigger buzz than they've had in the previous 2 cycles. And it's been continually building. And you're going to see that even more in the 26 class. This because you start to see the national pundits now paying attention to the story. They're saying, oh, Notre Dame has the number 1 class, or they have the number 2 class. Yeah, it's been that way. And I don't think they're going anywhere. That fade down the stretch that eventually lands Notre Dame in between 8 to 11, I don't know if that's coming in the 25 class.
So it's funny, Shaun. I'm even thinking back to 2026 now, right? And for people that don't know, and you would have found this out on the message board last night, but Notre Dame's down visiting. A couple coaches are down at IMG today, right? In there. And Shaun, they're in a pretty good early spot with like Zach Fort in the 2026 class, the star safety, who I'm going to be honest, man. When I first saw a top 50 or top 35, I think by one service, safety from IMG Academy that has been being recruited since he was a freshman in college. When I first saw his name on the list of guys that were getting offered in pot of gold, I was like, yeah, right, dog. Not a chance. Not a chance. But then you talk to him, he makes it a priority to come up and visit right after the thing. And you're like, oh, this is the Mike Mickens effect, man. Even though he's a safety rather than a corner. I mean, Mike Mickens is the secondary coach now. This is the Mike Mickens effect, I think. I think it really is. And you're seeing it now. We wanted we wanted a immediate return on Kyle Hamilton going top 15 and being a great safety, right? But Shaun, we know how it works though, man. Things stack, and that's where pipelines are created. That's where momentum is built. It's not just about it's not just about, and Brandon Pleasant, I know that they have a better chance with him. I'm just making the point that they have a chance at all, was my point, my friend. Come on, man. Follow me here. Follow me, Shaun. I wasn't saying they have the best chance out of any safety on the board is with Zach Ford. I'm just saying that they have a chance, is the point, right? But Shaun, they have Julian Love, who's doing a good job in the NFL, but then Kyle Hamilton, now Cam Hart, now, well, also Louis Gilman, like throw a couple of those guys in, but now Benjamin Morrison next year. That's where you stack, man. How do teams become DBU or anything you? It's by stacking, man. It doesn't happen in a year. It doesn't happen with a snap of a finger. It happens over time. And I think over time, this is where we're trending. This is where it's going. This is where it's going. And I'm excited for it, man. I am. And also, I mean, they're not just closing their eyes about the few that I was talking about, right? The four names that we know, or the five names that we know. Also, like a Dalen Penson, who's kind of a late blooming top 150 kid out of Georgia. He's visiting Notre Dame in June and camping. And who knows if that goes really well and Notre Dame loves what he looks like and all that type of stuff, then maybe he's a guy that is added to that board of guys that they'll push for. I mean, it's a great place to be in, man. And top 20 kid, number 20 commit in the class for Notre Dame, Shaun. And by the way, they're attacking the state of Florida, my friends. They're attacking it, aren't they? Ivan Taylor. We have
Notre Dame can't
Dixon.
recruit Florida though. Well, that's the previous regime said that.
Yeah. Ah, man.
Can't recruit Florida.
They were absent in the state of Florida for a while.
Or have to shop down a different aisle, right? We have to shop down a different aisle in Notre Dame, right?
Well, they're shopping down the aisle of top 50 Ivan Taylor, top 50 Dallas Golden, Davion Dixon, 4-star out of Miami Palmetto, by the way. Like, not exactly the most Notre Dame friendly environments down there. Justin Thurman, who I know Justin Thurman was originally a St. Louis kid, but we're still going to count him as a Florida guy. We're still going to count him there, right? And Shaun, do you know the buzz? You want to talk about the buzz? Did you see the first person of note that retweeted the Dallas Golden? Hayes Fawcett put out his graphic. Did you see the first person to put it out and tag him, Shaun?
I don't think so.
There's a guy named Javon Boggs out of Cocoa High School with some eyes and being like, hashtag Notre Dame ? Shaun, this isn't stopping, man. The state of Florida is on notice, my friend. They're on notice to Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
The buzz is real. Do you remember the days? This is so funny to me, man. Do you remember the days when coaching staffs had like states and regions? Like, I don't know how it's set up with Notre Dame and their coaching staff. I just don't get that feel. I just think everybody is like, we're all attacking every state, every region. We have to build up the buzz. We have to get Notre Dame and its flag flying high in the best parts of this country for talent. And that's just a good feeling, right? Because I remember Brian Kelly and his staff, I actually said his name, but the previous regime and his staff, they really had regional breakdowns of guys that would go out and you were responsible for this state, you were responsible for that region. I don't know if that exists now, but it seems like a collective effort from Notre Dame. It really does.
It's all about effort, Shaun, at the end of the day, right? Look, I'm not going to throw shade at BK here much, right? But I do think that there was a propensity to settle at times for certain type of athletes because some other athletes required a little bit more efforts, right? Shaun, I'll ask this question and give me your honest answer here, okay? And then we'll move on from the Brian Kelly conversation. Do you think Brian Kelly and his staff would have been patient with Javon Boggs, who was once committed to Ohio State, that's a Cocoa, Florida kid?
No. And I'm sure we're going to talk about another kid. This is what's so great about this staff. The players that the previous regime would just give up on at any hint of anything negative. Like, well, you know what? Just give up. Notre Dame there's a local kid here at the wide receiver position that they've had every reason to drop off. Every reason. Nope. And guess what? He just announced his official. So,
Yeah.
like, that is high level recruiting, and that shows you where they feel like the program is. That's what makes me so excited about 2024, because it's a bigger statement than we got this person to come in through in the transfer portal. We got that guy to come in. This is going to be a season about the overall health of this program. That it's about everything. Like, the administration has answered the bell. Have they not?
Yeah.
Mike Denbrock, they answered the bell. New facilities, they answered the bell. Like, what else? Okay, cool. They're on board. Coaching staff, Marcus Freeman feels like, man, it's the best assembly of coaches I've had since my time here. It's only been 2 seasons. This is your third. Great.
Yep.
Now, let's see if everything starting August down in College Station lines up with everything we're feeling leading into that position or leading into the fall. It's a great time to be a fan, man. And the recruiting is just, this isn't even the pinnacle. I don't even think this is the apex yet. I think Notre Dame is still ascending. That's the scary thing about it.
Shaun, imagine if they make a deep playoff run or they win a national championship this year. Could you imagine? I mean, the instant impact that would have, just continuing to raise the level of expectations in recruiting and player development, would just be through this roof, man. It really would be. So, yeah, man, exciting times. We'll talk more about, obviously, 2025 recruiting. What's the end? Because as of today, guys, 20 commitments in the class for Notre Dame in the 2025 class. Not expecting a long list of players still, right? I mean, you have your quarterback, you have your 2 running backs. We'll see if anything, transpires with James Simon, but you have your 2 running backs in the class. You have your tight ends. We have opportunity, Notre Dame, to potentially get 2 more wide receivers on the board, which we'll obviously talk about down the road. They're still recruiting Josh Petty, although that's a little bit of a pipe dream. Offensive line, they can stick at 3 and they'll be totally fine. Defensive line, as of now, seems like it's done. We'll see if Notre Dame adds a guy to the board or they, do those types of things down the stretch. You never know. They tried to last year with Nandiak Boko down the stretch. They tried that one. So I'm sure Notre Dame will be active of evaluating defensive linemen and see if they can pull something down the stretch. We expect 1 to 2 more linebackers in the class. We expect Notre Dame to pull for 2 more corners potentially, and we expect 1 more safety if Jadon Blair wants to come to University of Notre Dame. So, Shaun, not a ton of names left on the board, and we will talk about if anybody wants to ask about any specific players Notre Dame is pushing for or status. Again, super chats, and we'll make sure to hit on it during this show. But we're going to transition to draft talk next, guys. Excited for it. 7 Notre Dame players that were selected in the 2024 NFL draft. We'll talk about fits. We'll talk about our expectations. We'll even talk about some of the PFA and UDFA types and the rookie minicamp invite that we got recent news of over the weekend as well. Before we do, though, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you know when the next show is coming up. Boards.irishbreakdown.com. We all will have a constant update. Coaches are also on the road this week again from the recruiting perspective. So updates on how those visits are going. We got it all for you guys. Boards.irishbreakdown.com. Also go to the free content in irishbreakdown.com. You can also go to Athlon as of now still, the SI site, obviously. So split up the content. Go read it all. And we'll be back next here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Shaun, 2024 NFL draft class. Can we talk about it, sir? 7 players that were selected during the 2024 NFL draft, former Notre Dame football players. We had expectations that it could go up to 8. That was kind of my expectations, but Sam Hartman did not get drafted. So we'll talk about his destination, even though, I don't know if you saw this, Shaun. We'll talk about this in a couple minutes, I guess, a little bit more in depth. Sam Hartman did get the highest guaranteed money of any UDFA, though, for just some conversation piece there. So obviously there was demand for him. I'm sure there was a bunch of teams that called, and that drives up his asking price for where he's going to go. That's the agent's perspective. But let's talk top of the board, Shaun. We'll go more into day 2, day 3, obviously. But let's start with Joe Alt, because I haven't talked to you about this. Number 5 overall to the Los Angeles Chargers. We won't talk as in-depth on this one because me and Brian broke this down on Friday, but obviously you haven't gotten a chance to talk about it with me anyway, Shaun. Number 5 overall, Los Angeles Chargers, going to play for Jim Harbaugh out west, your favorite coach in the National Football League now. So let's talk about the fifth for highest Notre Dame drafted offensive lineman since the year 1969. Shaun, been a long time, obviously, since we've had a kid go offensive lineman for Notre Dame go top 5. Your initial thoughts? Los Angeles Chargers, Joe Wall.
Yo, continuing the narrative of O-line U at Notre Dame, correct? Best O-lineman going into the draft. And this is the great story about this young man. Everyone else has to do it by going out. The Alabamas, they do it by going out and getting guys that are 5 stars. Notre Dame just brings offensive linemen in no matter where they're ranked, and they end up being dudes. That's what they do. And they end up being better than Alabama's offensive linemen in the pros. The proof is in the pudding for over a decade. Like, yeah, you can rank them higher, you can draft them higher, but at the end of the day, our guys end up better because they're better coached and they're better prepared. I don't think anything would be different. And we're going to talk about his partner bookend that ended up getting drafted a little bit higher probably than most people thought. But I just think that goes to the faith that I think Joe Alt, there's a duality to it. I think it goes to the O-line U narrative and the faith that scouts and coaches in the NFL have with players that come from the Notre Dame offensive line system. And on top of that, I think it speaks to the culture that Jim Harbaugh is trying to establish and the respect from afar that he had for Marcus Freeman in the program that he was building. You look at the players that he took from Notre Dame, and I think that shows you know what? I think they're similar to the way we coach. They coach hard-nosed football, O-line, D-line driven, and great defense. That's the type of players I want. And I think there's a duality into Joe Alt being drafted at 5 because a lot of people thought they would move out of that spot.
Yep.
They would move back. A lot of people thought Joe Alt would probably end up at 7 at Tennessee.
Yeah, I thought personally for me, I thought the window, the bubble was 5 to 7. I didn't think he would get past 7, but you never know, Shaun. I mean, we're getting late reports that J.C. Latham was high on some guys' board. So I mean, it just takes one guy to select J.C. Latham over Joe Alt to Joe Alt slide a couple spots. I mean, that's as easy as that conversation happens. Obviously, he becomes the top-ranked offensive tackle selected, the highest drafted since 1969. It's just. I mean, first and foremost, Shaun, I mean, can we just talk about the testament to this conversation? Because we're not talking about a kid that had yes, he came from NFL bloodlines, but it's not like this kid was given not every person was like,
right?
What's that?
3rd on the depth chart coming out of fall camp.
Brian was talking about this on Friday. It took 3 injuries at left tackle as a true freshman to give Joe Alt a spot. And we forget, and we'll talk about his partner in crime next here on the show, and because we're going to go in the order of when they were picked. But Blake Fisher was supposed to be the golden boy as a true freshman. He was the golden boy. Joe Alt was the high school tight end that some people had as a 3-star that like he needs a lot of work and a lot of physical development. And you look back at it, Shaun, it's like freshman year, freshman All-American after he got the nod, right? After Blake gets hurt and after Tosh Baker and Michael Carmody falter, then Joe Alt becomes the guy, freshman All-American, and then 2 years of just outstanding film, right? Especially in 2023. And you look back at it, it's just like, that's the developmental arc that you hope for, but is not usually attainable. Like, you don't usually see it that easily, man. A 3-star, borderline 4-star by 1 or 2 platforms that becomes a first-round pick, a top 5 pick in 3 years. That doesn't happen that way typically.
Let me ask you something, Double R, as a talent evaluator and your time that you spend with Draft Talk consistently.
Right.
You just opened a door to something that made me think about when I was talking to Charles Jagasaw. Okay. And he was talking about the most impressive thing was not the way that the starters were coached, but that the backups were coached even harder. Because he knew at some point I need to be prepared when my moment came, and exactly what happened from his recruiting when the moment came during bowl prep, he was ready.
Yeah.
He was ready, right? So now you talk about Joe Alt, you talk about Charles Jagasaw. When the moment comes for these guys, are they ready? Go back once again. How many injuries had to happen for Ashton Craig to get in?
Yeah.
But when he got in, boy, was he ready.
He was ready.
Was he ready? In Death Valley, late third quarter, meat of the game, high intensity, this kid just comes off the sideline. He's ready. That's the most impressive thing about that O-line. That's the most, I'm sorry, man. When you consistently put forth guys that are third on the depth chart going into games that aren't expected to even play, but they get the opportunity to come in, and when they come in, they're prepared. That says something, man. Not only about whomever is coach, because it's happened with several coaches over that room. So that says more about the player accountability in that room. That is consistent. It's consistent and it bears fruit. That from a talent perspective, how does that look? That has to look great from NFL execs and draft rooms. Like, yo, look at this. Like they're probably watching Joe Alt at Stanford or at Clemson, and they see Ashton Craig walk in, and they're like, yo, who is this? Is he his third string?
I mean, it's a testament to the program and the development that they have at the offensive line position, Shaun. I mean, it's especially increased. Obviously, we're not going to talk about Jeff Quinn too much here, right? But obviously, Harry Heastan was a great developer, and it seems like Joe Rudolph's a good developer. I mean, obviously, I don't expect him to be Harry Heastan in that department, but he's had several offensive linemen play in the NFL. He had Brian O'Neill when he was at Pittsburgh, and he's had Ryan Ramczyk at Wisconsin and Logan Bruss, and like he's the center Joe Tippmann that was drafted last year as a starting center for the New York Jets. So yeah, man, he is definitely in continued development. Will it be as good as Harry Heastan? I have no idea at the end of the day, but he is obviously a good football coach, and he's had a long track record of development. And now Joe Alt is a great symbol of that. I mean, Joe Alt's been through the ringer a little bit, right? 3 offensive line coaches in. That's another thing that was going against Joe Alt, Shaun, that we don't talk about enough. He had 3 offensive line coaches in 3 years. Yeah. That doesn't usually help development at all. That stability is not good. Like, it's just not. It's really not. So
one of the reasons we thought Blake Fisher ended up leaving. Like, yo.
Yeah.
But
part of it, yeah.
But it's like you spoke about it. There were no clear advantages. I will say the return of, and we're going to get to this with some of the other guys down the line, but the return of Harry Heastan, I think, was pretty important in the development of both of these tackles, especially Joe Alt.
Especially because freshman year of Jeff Quinn, growing into his body, and then sophomore year getting Harry Heastan, which is kind of really a big foundational year is sophomore year, especially because Joe's young. I think that was big for sure. Yeah. I also think him having Matt Bayless early on in his career for the first couple of years was pretty beneficial for him as well. Body by Bayless, right? So I think all that stuff goes into it. Shaun, at the end of the day, a lot of people can watch film. Well, let me rephrase. There's a decent amount of people that can watch film and know if a player is good or not, right? But you're trying as a scout to alleviate risk as an evaluator. And I believe that Joe Alt was the top offensive tackle off the board and a top 5 pick because he just checked so many boxes, Shaun. Like, there just wasn't a lot that you looked at and said, like, man, that makes me unsettled on Joe Alt. I already talked about it. High school tight ends, that plays into his favor. 6'8" plus, 320 pounds with 34 plus inch arms. That hits every threshold you want. Tested as an elite athlete. Has a father that was a very good offensive lineman in the NFL. Not a good offensive line or an average offensive lineman, like a very good one in the Chiefs Ring of Honor. By the way, he also was coached by Harry Heastan for a year, but has that Notre Dame letter next to him, right? Has that symbol next to his name, which means something for people. All those things together, that's why Joe Alt went top 5, because you just couldn't poke a lot of holes. Does he still need to get a little bit stronger? Sure. But Shaun, you know how easy it is to increase weight room strength? Let's go to NFL strength and conditioning staff. Like, that'll be something that will be very easily fixed if they even think it needs to be fixed. So Joel went that high because he just checked way too many boxes. Yeah. Let's talk about the next guy off the board, Mr. Blake Fisher, Shaun, who Blake Fisher was projected by most to be a 3rd to 4th round pick, okay? So he went number 59 overall in the 2nd round to the Houston Texans. And Shaun, I just want to read off their depth chart for a second because I believe right now Blake Fisher has a decent chance to start as a rookie in the NFL.
Yeah.
They have Laramie Tunsil at left tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's there. They have Titus Howard at left guard, former first-round pick who settled solidly into guard. They have Juice Scruggs from Penn State, second-year player who's a pretty solid center. They also have at right guard Shaq Mason, who's been a mainstay in the NFL for a long time. At right tackle right now, their starting offensive tackle is Charlie Heck of the guys that are returning. Okay, they have Charlie Heck. They have Killian Zerer as a backup offensive tackle, and they have David Sharp. Shaun, Blake Fisher could start as a rookie, which is kind of wild to say. As much as we've talked about, there's still a lot of development that needs to happen. But Blake Fisher gets put into a offensive line room that, one, he has a chance to start very early on in his career. But two, Shaun, the Houston Texans are a foundation and organization that is on the rise, man. What a job that staff is doing. What a job D'Amico Ryans did in year one, protecting CJ Stroud. Blake has an opportunity here to play a lot of football in year one with the Houston Texans.
Think about that. Out of all the criticism he took and all the doubt and people saying, he should have stayed another year, what did we say? It only takes one team. It only takes one team. And he has talent. You can't say he doesn't have talent. It takes one team. Now, my question was, what type of team does he go to at Pittsburgh Steelers that wants to run the ball and that is more run-oriented? But now, young man, that dude back there, the rookie of the year, the dude that threw for 4,000, took us to the playoffs, keep him off the ground. That's going to be very interesting, right? But I love it because he has a quarterback that is really good at getting rid of the football. Yeah, I think he played with some offensive tackles during his time that weren't exactly elite. Laramie Tunsil might have been his first truly elite offensive tackle. The two tackles he had his senior year at Ohio State, they were good.
I mean, one went top 10, so
yeah,
they were pretty good. Yeah,
they were good. But I understood, man, and I think. Would you compare? Is it too early to say this offensive line class is probably less competitive than next year's batch?
Oh no, this is a great offensive line class. This 2024 group. I haven't done enough film evaluations for 2025, strictly offensive linemen, but like off just the early rip, 2024 was maybe the best offensive line class in the entirety that I've ever evaluated. 2025 does not seem to that level to me. Does not seem.
Paris Johnson is, look, man, people use the word freak way too much, bro. Trent Brown is a freak. I need to see a lot more before I start applying the word freak. Laramie Tunsil has become.
Shaun, your two most hated words that since I've known you. One is hater, two is freak.
Like, how we just pass out words just like anybody that's big and seems like they.
Yeah. Paris Johnson also wasn't 6'8", but I mean, we can keep putting false information in the chat. I did like Paris Johnson as a prospect, though. I did. I think he had a lot of developmental upside. So,
did you like him last year the way he played?
I didn't really see him for the Cardinals last year. Was he bad?
No, you didn't see him. That's what he didn't. You didn't hear about him that much, did you? I saw him against the Bears get smoked.
Oh, really?
A couple of times. Yep. Montez Sweat put him in the wrench.
Okay.
Squeezed him. Yeah, I saw that. But he's freaking.
Yeah, Paris Johnson is definitely not 6'8". Now, if we're talking about DeJuan Jones, then we could be talking about a 6'8" guy. We could talk about a 6'8" guy in that conversation.
Who actually DeJuan Jones came on.
DeJuan was playing good ball for Cleveland, and then he got hurt.
He
was playing pretty good ball for the Browns.
After injury, someone got injured. He stepped in. He was playing really well.
Yeah. Too bad that kid hates football. That's a conversation for another day that we'll not get into on this podcast. But yes. But so Blake said I have an opportunity though, Shaun, to get back to him. Am I surprised that Blake went in the second round? Slightly. Am I shocked about it though? No, I'm not, because of a lot of the same things we just talked about with Joe Alt stand with Blake. Blake is not nearly the player that Joe is. He's not quite the talent that Joe is either, but he's a multi-year starter at Notre Dame. He's got the Notre Dame emblem next to his name. He's long, and he's certainly got untapped talent. So Second round pick, late second round, Blake Fisher.
Tidbit from the pro day. Remember, I texted you that the Texans O-line coach is one of the coaches that jumped in to coach Blake during the workout multiple times.
Yes.
And there you see the Texans come up and get him in the second round. Like I said, it only takes one team to fall in love with you.
Yeah. Oh, you're not wrong about that. So, yeah. So Blake Fisher, number 59 overall to the Houston Texans. We'll see how if he's able to gain that right tackle spot. But again, Shaun, unless there's a free agent that hits the wave and the Houston Texans make a play at him, it looks like he might have the inside track to right tackle. It's going to have to beat Charlie Heck, but I feel like Charlie Heck's not very good. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. I've never heard Charlie Heck in like a positive vein other than him just being a swing tackle. So I could be completely wrong about that. But regardless, let's move on, Shaun. The biggest surprise for me in this class, a player that I had mocked in the 5th round goes in the 3rd round, Shaun. Mr. Marist Liufau is drafted number 87 overall to Shaun Steyer's favorite team that I'm sure I'll talk to him about it on Tuesday night. Shaun Steyer's favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys, draft Marist Liufau. Now, Shaun, heading into the draft, linebacker was about as big a need, or one of the biggest needs for the Dallas Cowboys. That obviously Leighton Vander Esch had gotten injured and banged up, no longer on the roster. We know what happened with Jalen Smith, kind of diminishing down the stretch. I know they signed Eric Kendricks this offseason, who was a longtime Minnesota Viking, played with the Chargers last year, but just kind of a stopgap. I don't think he's a guy that's going to be in the long-term plans for them. They really need linebacker help. They do. And they're very high on Marist Liufau, apparently, man. Top 100 pick, number 87 overall. Initial thoughts, and we'll dig deeper into what it could mean for him year one. But Marist Liufau went a lot higher in this draft than I anticipated him going.
The defensive guys that got drafted, starting with Marist Liufau, they owe a lot to Al Golden. No Al Golden, I don't think any of these guys reached the potential that allowed them to go down to the Senior Bowl and perform the way they performed. And Marist, you have to tip your cap. Everybody that took a shot at this kid that said he wanted to make sure that he got his body right to go prep for the Senior Bowl and the Combine. And people were like, well, he should have played in the bowl. No, he made the right decision based upon everything he had been through physically at Notre Dame. The young man made the right decision, and I'm happy to see this young man reap the fruit of his labor. Absolutely ecstatic, even though I felt like, wow, okay, Cowboys.
That's early, right? Yeah.
I actually think he fits their style, though. To get the best out of him, the way they use their linebackers, which might not be the most intelligent way, but with Dan Quinn gone now, we'll see how things change on the defensive side of the ball. But they're all about speed. And if you could activate Marist and let him run and make plays, he might end up being. I'm interested in seeing how they use him as well. I do. I'm happy for the young man. You talk about somebody that has persevered.
Yes.
Man.
Injury, a lot of naysayers in the fan base. A lot of people weren't big fans of Marist, but apparently the NFL liked him, Shaun. Liked him a good bit. And Marist had a very interesting draft process. I thought he had a very good showing at the Senior Bowl. I thought he showed a lot of good there. Then he went to the Combine, only ran a 40, which was kind of interesting. And then his testing numbers at the Pro Day were not very good for a guy that I consider a very good athlete on film. I mean, again, the processing is very inconsistent, but the athlete I didn't think was very inconsistent. I thought he was always a really good athlete. So we'll see how he fits in, man. As of today, the starting inside linebackers, they run and I want to mention, so the 4.25, 4.25 base is kind of what they're listed at least from our lads. Mm-hmm. Starting inside linebackers are Eric Kendricks and Damone Clark. After that, they don't have a ton of depth. And again, Eric Kendricks is a little bit old. Damone Clark is a guy that who knows? But I think you made an interesting note here, Shaun. I don't know if Marist Liufau is going to play a start as a rookie. I think he's probably going to be more a key reserve rotational piece and then also a special teamer. I think that he'll do that very well. But he is going to be playing for Mike Zimmer, who's a new defensive coordinator for Dallas Cowboys. And for people that don't know too much about Mike Zimmer, Cincinnati Bengals, long time defense coordinator, also coached with the Dallas Cowboys before, and then he was the Minnesota Vikings head coach for several years. Shaun, Mike Zimmer is a great defensive coach, absolutely tremendous defensive coach. And what is he, Shaun? You mentioned it already. He's aggressive, man. He likes to blitz. He likes to be really penetration style in his defensive fronts. He likes to create a lot of negatives, and Marist has upside there. So I'm interested to see how Mike Zimmer visions this young man. And also, did you see the video circulating of Marist talking with Jerry Jones and Mike Zimmer and Mike McCarthy or whatever? Man, they need to lock Jerry Jones away, man. They need to put him in a home or something. They need to get him out of there, my friend. Like he's wild, man. He's a wild dude at this time. But still, really cool moment for Marist. You're absolutely correct. I think he lands with his ideal defensive coordinator, Mike Zimmer. I think that match could be very, very beneficial for him. Mike Zimmer, not singer, Mike Zimmer. Did I tell you that I saw Jerry Jones in Indianapolis, by the way? Did I tell you about that one?
How'd that go?
I guess I can tell the story because it's not like incriminating or anything, right? So I'll tell the story. People saw it. It's not like it's a hidden secret, right? So Shaun, the one night we were at a bar and just chatting with a couple guys, having a drink, and someone taps me on the shoulder and was like, "Hey, can you move? We're taking a picture," right? And I was like, "Sure, I can move." So I move over and I didn't look back to see who it was. Then I look back. It was Jerry Jones taking a picture with two probably 30-year-old blonde girls. Okay. 30-year-old blondes. Takes the picture, proceeds to walk with the two 30-year-old blondes to his limo, and he was gone, sir. He was gone. He was gone. So I don't know what happened from there. People could use their imaginations.
That's why the Cowboys cannot prosper right there.
Is that why?
That's why. That's why. I've been trying to figure out, with all the talent they've had, why in the world can they not break through this glass ceiling? Yep, it's the owner. In more ways than one. It's the owner.
Oh, God.
That's just affirmation.
Jerry's funny, man. He's a funny guy. Yeah. I love
Jerry. He's a hero, though. He's a national treasure, and he's a hero to a lot of guys that are 20 or 30 because they wish they could walk out of a bar restaurant with two blondes headed to their limo as well.
I mean, a lot of people were probably super jealous of him at that point. So yeah, man. Yeah. Good for Jerry, man. Good for Jerry. But
did he meet him there or did he fly him in?
I have no idea. That was literally my first. Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. That one went over my head for a second there too, man. That's yeah. Good for him though. Good for him. Whatever. All right, so Marist Liufau. That's it, Shaun. That was day 2. Blake Fisher 59, Marist Liufau 87. That was your day 2 NFL draft picks for Notre Dame. It was a that's 3 of the 7 that were drafted here. So day 3 was very busy for Notre Dame. Funny enough, I expected, because I thought Cam Hart could potentially go in the 3rd rounds, maybe Audric, potentially, depending on a team fit, right? No, Irish English. Someone said the same thing about if maybe there were his granddaughters, and the answer is no. They certainly were not his granddaughters. But that's another one. We got to move past that one. We got to move past. Day 3 was very interesting, Shaun. 4th round, I was certain that Audric Estime and Cam Hart were both going to be taken in the 4th round. Neither were taken in the 4th round, Shaun. No one lasted until they all lasted until at least the 5th round. So, first one to go in the 5th round was. Unless I'm mixing someone up here, but I believe, yes. Cam Hart was the first one to come off the board, Shaun, in the 5th round. Cam Hart goes number 140 overall to the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay, so first one to go off the board, number 140 overall to the Los Angeles Chargers. This one was very, very interesting. Okay, so I want to give you guys a little bit of background on this one. Because I had told you all, I believe that I was on the channel, or maybe I was just on the message board. I can't remember. But Cam was we were thinking 3rd rounds, more than likely, maybe 4th, dependent. But he's falling, right? He's falling. And I'm seeing some corners go before Cam that I'm just like, man, I think the NFL's higher on Cam than those guys. Like Tarheeb still, and I'm not trying to throw shade at the young man out of Maryland because he was drafted in the 5th round, and I'm sure he's going to be a good football player for the Los Angeles Chargers. But he was actually the first corner they took in that round. And I was like, what's the deal here, right? So I actually texted a scouting buddy I have that is on he scouts for a team that was not in the range of picks that we were at the point. I think I texted him when it was like 1:30 something was on the clock. And I was like, hey man, is there a medical red flag here? Because I've been told before the draft that there was no medical red flag on Cam. He had passed through and he'd been good and everything was fine. So I text a guy that has no bias, and I know that he's going to give me an honest answer because he's not on the clock, and so he's not in the conversation, right? So I text him and I just say, hey, was there a late medical red flag on Cam Hart? Was there a late one? And actually, let me read this word for word. I will give you guys exactly what he said to me. Here it is. So he said, nothing major, passed through well. Surprised to see some of these cornerbacks go before him. So why was Cam Hart a 5th round pick? Why did he fall to 140? The answer I have for you guys is I'm not 100% sure. There was no medical red flag lates. There were, and we've talked about this, the major concerns over Cam were 1, medicals with the shoulders. 2, the biggest concern overall was lack of ball production. Only had 2 career interceptions while at Notre Dame, and both of them came in the same game against Wisconsin a couple years ago. And the other one was long speed, as far as like elite long speed. Now, not elite long speed, but 4.5 flats for a guy that is 6'3" with 33-inch arms is plenty fast. So I'm here to say, though, that I'm not totally sure why that fall happens. But I will say this, and we'll talk about this a little deeper. I think Cam Hart, although he had to be patient and it was very unfortunate that he fell, I think he falls into a really good situation in Los Angeles. Because right now, Los Angeles has Asante Samuel Jr. as one of their starting corners, and he's a very good player on the NFL level. Very good player. But on the other side, Christian Fulton was signed this offseason from Tennessee. And funny enough, Irish AJ, I saw you in the chat, not top end speed versus others. I think the corner that was drafted before him, or a couple that were drafted before him, ran slower than Cam. So I don't think it's the top end speed. It was just a weird situation. It was just very weird. I truly do not have an answer for you on exactly what happens. I'll try to get a little bit more insight, but again, my scouting friends, who's a legitimate, like an area scout for a team, was just like, I don't know why some of these corners are going higher than him. Like, I'm not really sure. So it was just a little bit odd. It was a little bit odd. But like I was saying, Asante Samuel Jr. one side. The other sides, though, I mean, you have Christian Fulton that you were signed from the Tennessee Titans. He's been a little banged up and hasn't been great. And outside of that, it's guys like Chris Wilcox that have no proven production to be a starting NFL corner on the next level. So Cam Hart's going to have to battle with Christian Fulton to be the corner opposite of Asante Samuel Jr. But I think he has a chance. I truly do think he has a chance, man. I think that he could start sometime as a rookie. I do. I firmly believe that, man. Firmly believe that. He is a little bit, and this is kind of what we're talking about with, how teams pick sometimes, right? The guys that fall boards, the up boards. We talk about medicals all the time, but another thing that we don't talk about enough is scheme fits. And I do think that the one sticking point, or the one thing that may have caused Cam to fall a little bit, was that Cam is a little bit scheme specific, in my opinion, in that he's taller, he can turn and run, he's explosive getting downhill, but he is a little bit limited in change of direction. If you go look at like his numbers from short shuttle and 3-cone, like he just isn't the greatest change of direction player of all time. So I think that there's going to be some schemes like a off man team probably won't love Cam Hart, but a press man team and then a zone heavy team, they could, I think that they would like a player like a Cam Hart. So Shaun, as I bring you in, man, again, we're talking about, I think It was unfortunate that Cam fell to pick 140 to Los Angeles Chargers, but I do think that there's opportunity for him, man. I do think that there's opportunity for him to play a lot opposite Asante Samuel Jr. It's going to be up to, obviously, him impressing in rookie minicamp and then into training camp, but I think he's got a good opportunity in front of him, man, out in LA.
And familiarity with Chris O'Leary being in the room.
You are wrong.
So that's always an advantage to have someone that knows you and is going to fight for you in that room amongst the other coaches. Great position, but he's going to be challenged, right? You're in the same division with Pat Mahomes, bro.
Yeah.
And he has two dudes now that can run. So
well, Shaun, the good thing is the one thing that I was talking about as far as like the areas of concern with Cam or ball production, right? And turning the football over. Well, if he's playing opposite of Asante Samuel Jr., they're going to be throwing at Cam more than Asante Samuel Jr. So he's going to have a chance to prove that he can make some plays on the football, man. He's going to have some plays to prove that he can do it. And I think that, hey, I know as a Notre Dame channel, we hate Michigan, Jim Harbaugh and everything. Jim Harbaugh is a very good coach, though. And I will say this, Shaun, is that I believe that Los Angeles Charger team in the future is going to be on a little bit of a rise here now, right? And shout out to him. Not only did he get two guys in the draft, right? Also signed somebody else as a free agent. And Los Angeles apparently is very high, and Jim Harbaugh is very high on former Notre Dame players. So we'll see how it figures out, but I do like the fit. I like the fit for Cam.
And Notre Dame players have a pretty good history with the Chargers, right?
A lot on the team right now.
Right? We see, just won a Super Bowl, but he spent the majority of his young career with the Chargers as well before signing as a free agent in Kansas City and winning the Super Bowl. So, Notre Dame players usually can go out there. Jerry Tillery went out there. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out well for him. But it just seems like certain organizations fall in love with certain programs. Notre Dame and Dallas, they love Dallas. The Dallas Cowboys love Notre Dame players. Minnesota, the Bears have had an affinity. The Bears, Joe Alt was honestly, I was hearing the entire time that Joe Alt was number one on their board, but they didn't believe that he would make it to them.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And there's video out that Ian Cunningham had to keep Ryan Poles from trading up. Ryan Poles kept wanting to trade up in this draft from the 9th slot. And it was either for Rome Odunze or Joe Alt. And then once Alt went at 5, then he got a little bit more scared and wanted to trade up to make sure he got Rome Odunze. And he fell in their lap. So that just goes to show you, man, I'm glad Ian Cunningham kind of grabbed his coattail like, relax. Let the board play out. For Cam Hart, it's not even about, I'm sure he would have loved to go higher, but I'm actually happy with where Maris landed and where Cam landed.
With team perspective, right?
Yeah, from a team perspective.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm after to ask you this, Shaun. I actually kind of like the Bears draft this year, man. I think they did pretty well. I don't know if you agree with that, but I think they did pretty well as a draft this year. I know they had 5 or 6 picks, but
I'm going to ask you a question at the end of this because I've been getting a lot of pushback from Bears fans, and I'm like, I don't care what you say. I just think it's an interesting debate, but I'm interested to see how you and the rest of the fans think about it.
All right. Well, we'll do that at the end of this segment. That sounds like a great idea. Fifth round, Shaun, second player in the 5th round here in the 2024 NFL draft. This would surprise me a little bit too, because I expected it to be Audric next, but it was not Audric. 3 picks after Cam Hart. The Atlanta Falcons selected former Notre Dame linebacker J.D. Bertrand as the 5th player off the board for Notre Dame, right? Unless I'm missing someone, that would be the 5th player off the board. Yeah, 5th player off the board. Interesting fit here, Shaun. First and foremost. Oh, I forgot to ask you about did you see the Cam Hart conversation on the phone with Chris O'Leary and stuff? That was dope, man. Yeah. That was really cool.
It was really dope. Yeah.
So Atlanta Falcons draft J.D. Bertrand. For people that don't know, he's a Roswell, Georgia guy originally, right? That's his home. And I also saw the video of him getting the call from Atlanta, and he gets to stay home, man. Has to be a pretty cool feeling for a Georgia kid to get that phone call. A little bit earlier than some people thought. I thought he was going to be more in the maybe 6-ish round, somewhere in that ballpark. But a 5th-round pick by the Atlanta Falcons, J.D. Bertrand gets to go back home.
I love Mel Kiper. He needs to relax a little bit.
Oh, what'd he say? What'd he say?
He was like, yo, he's the next Zach Thomas. I said,
Oh,
whoa.
no, he didn't. No, he didn't. Did he?
Yes, he did on live TV. Yes, he did.
Oh.
And I think it was Louis Riddick was like, so he's going to the Hall of Fame. And then he backed up a little bit. I was like, wait a minute, man. That maybe in size and stature.
Right.
But you go look at production at Texas Tech.
Oh, like, that's also a little disrespectful to JD from the size and stature thing, because he's like 2 or 3 inches taller than Zach Thomas, man. My guy was like 5'11" on a good day. So
this once again, Marist, JD, make sure you give a nice gift to Al Golden, because his defense and what it did for you and the level it took both you guys to. You saw the fruit of it this past weekend, young gentlemen, young men. You did. He deserves a lot, and it's right in line, because you look at a guy like Jermaine Pratt and how he was who coached him when he got to Cincinnati. It was Al Golden,
some old guy.
So look, now you should be really excited about the talent that has elevated in their room and how they can be developed in this defense. Like, we expect fully Drake, KBA, all these guys 2-3 years down the line, like, oh yeah, that's second round picks, second, third round picks. Oh, without question. Yeah, we got JD to go It's
a really interesting process for JD too, because JD played pretty well at the Senior Bowl, in my opinion. I thought he had a good week overall, but then Shaun, he wasn't able to test. A lot of teams just kind of throw those guys out because they're just like, I don't have any verified measurables on you, man. I know we got GPS data, but I mean, a kid that has some, again, straight line, I don't think there's too much concern with JD. I think most people thought he would run pretty well, but like the change of direction numbers, like the explosiveness numbers, that was probably a little bit more of a question, but we didn't get those numbers.
Actually, except for, because I think he comes into a situation where he can get playing time. And he's going to be smart as a whip. He's going to be one of the smartest dudes on the defense immediately, right? And I actually like the Trice pick. I think they got some really good. I love
the Trice pick.
Absolutely,
I loved Atlanta's like mid-round to late-round selections. It was just the first pick that I didn't even hate the Ruka pick. I know he was picked before Johnny Newton, but like, guys, there was some character stuff with Johnny Newton. I just want people to understand that. John Newton's excellent though. Like there's no doubt. But there were some character question marks there, okay? But I liked Ruka as a football player. It was just Michael Penix with the 8th overall selection when you just paid a quarterback $180 million.
You don't want to believe what they're telling you. You don't want to believe what the Falcons are telling you. They're telling you. They're telling you, hey, yo, we don't believe this dude is going to make the full term of this contract.
Which is fine. But you're paying him $100 million guaranteed, Shaun.
They overpaid to get him for the 2 years. That's what they did. They said, okay, we're overpaying. And I don't think they were thinking that way until they would look. Give Michael Penix credit. Everything he needed to do on that pro day, he did it.
Oh, no doubt. I don't even dislike Michael Penix with the Falcons necessarily. I just think the process is like, what the heck, man?
But it's only flawed because they went to that pro day and said, oh, I don't know if he's going to get to the second round. Now, think about it. Maybe they went into it saying, yo, maybe we can jump back in the late first and get him. And then you don't know what they're hearing.
Yeah.
From the Denver. With Denver had taken him over Bo Nix. You don't know. So they're saying
Raiders maybe a 13.
Raiders maybe a 13. So now they're saying, oh, we got to get in front of these dudes, or we have to take them here. Like, we want to come away from this day getting him. And we value him. Now, this is the question. With all of their questions, you value him over Dallas Turner? You value him over Jared Verse? By the way, dude.
Rams with Verse 19, right? Good pick. Yep.
They get Fisk and Verse?
Should be athletic. Should be athletic up front. Yeah. On top of Kobe Turner. That's pretty good athletes.
Don't we say good things always happen to good organizations? You lose, that's quite frankly, the greatest defensive tackle of all time. of all time.
Yeah.
And then 2 guys just fall into your lap.
The common misconception, because the Rams have been trading away first-round picks so often, is that the Rams aren't good drafters, and it's actually the exact opposite. They're actually very good drafters, which is why they kind of trust themselves to hit on mid and late round guys more than most teams. But
Puka Nacua was pretty good, right?
Kyron Williams, fifth
Kyron
rounds, yeah, pretty good.
Kyron.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, people are hating on the Rook Ororororo, but that is how you pronounce Rook Ororororo. That's how you pronounce it. It's not my fault that it sounds like a Scooby-Doo impression, okay? Exactly. I did not create the name. I am just here to say one more time for you all in the back. Rook Ororororo. It's how you say his name. What do you want me to say about it? It's how you say his name. Get off my back.
It is. I think the Falcons literally told you what they were thinking. They told you. They told you, and people just don't like it. It's like, okay, you might not like what I'm saying, but at least you know
right
where I stand, and now it plays out. Now, is that fair to the guy? You just got $100 million. I care less about fair. As long as I'm the starter, I hold my job as long as I can.
Sure.
The check's still clear.
I did like the Brandon Trice pick, to your point. I did like the Brandon. And they got Brandon Dorless as well on day 3 out of Oregon. Defensive line is going to be a lot better, I think, moving forward, because they still need some edge help, but hopefully Dorless can provide a little bit. Braylon Trice as well. Shaun, the linebacker room, though, that J.D. Bertrand is going to be kind of to compete against. So here's the projected starters are Caden Ellis, who's formerly of New Orleans. He had over 100 tackles last year, 4.5 sacks. Pretty productive football player. Nate Landman, formerly of Colorado. Troy Anderson, who was a second-round pick a couple years ago out of Montana State. They also have Donovan Mooten and Milo Eifler, who I believe was a Illinois player, if I remember correctly. I think Eifler was. Shaun, JD might not start this year, but I think, one, he'll make the team because I think he'll provide special teams value and communication value. And we'll see, man. I mean, hey, Caden Ellis is a pretty solid player. I imagine that he'll be a starting inside linebacker, but I mean, Nate Landman, could JD at some point beat out Nate Landman to be the starter? Could he hold off with Troy Anderson? I mean, it's possible, man. I mean, I wouldn't count it out.
Who's the DC there? Oh, Raheem Morris is the head coach. Who's the DC, though?
Their defensive coordinator for them is Jimmy Lake, former Washington head coach.
Oh, wow. Yep. Now, I know Raheem Morris loves smaller, faster linebackers.
He does.
He does. So,
no doubt.
We'll see. JD could have a shot.
I think it's possible, man. I do think it's possible. So we'll see how it all plays out. But yeah, man, it's an interesting fit, and I think that it could be one that is beneficial for JD long term because hey, man, they need to continue to bolster that roster because it's not a great roster. I mean, it's an okay roster offensively, but defensively, there's a lot of holes in that roster. They need to continue to fill it. Only 4 picks after that, Shaun. We have our third Notre Dame Fighting Irish player come off the board in the 5th round. Audric Estime, drafted by the Denver Broncos with pick 147. First and foremost, Shaun, the NFL stinks. How do you draft Isaac Guerendo over Audric Estime? I know what people are going to say. One ran 4.33. Isaac Guerendo stinks. Stop it. He was a backup at Louisville. But we're going to, he's better than Audric Estime. Give me a break. Shaun, 2 years. We did this 2 years ago where people undervalued a Notre Dame player. You know what he did last year? He was second in the league in rushing and made All-Pro, Kyron Williams. Well, how did the NFL do this again? Twice in 3 years. They undervalued a really good Notre Dame player, Notre Dame running back, and let him fall to the 5th rounds. I'm shocked that this happened. I actually am shocked. I figured the NFL would learn from their mistake, but they let it happen again. And I think that long term, they're going to look back and say, we probably should have drafted Audric Estime 2 rounds earlier. We probably should have done that.
We know what it is. It's the undervaluing of the position.
Yep.
Right? And because of the way the game is going, they value speed more.
Sure.
They looked at the numbers instead of looking at the film, and said, yo, we value Garindo and other guys higher. If you look at the film of Audric Estime, constantly seeing 8-9 in the box for 2 straight years, constantly, no other option. Look at the receivers Garindo had on his squad. I don't think Garindo saw 8-9 in the box. He definitely had a better play caller.
Yeah,
that set him up, and he was a backup. This is a young man that basically had the offense on his shoulders. His last year in Notre Dame. I don't understand what they were seeing. I have no clue. Double R, I have no clue.
Shaun, his film was so good this year, man. It's so good. And we're treating him like, look, I actually talked about this before. I don't know if you agree with this. I understood Kyren Williams falling because I looked at him and said, he ran 4.6 something and he's only 199 pounds.
Yeah.
That's like, look, he's a smaller guy who also isn't a dynamic athlete. I understand why Kyren Williams fell a little bit. I don't get the Audric Estime thing. Yeah. He ran faster at the pro day. We were both there for the Kyren Williams pro day, Shaun. I know the reported time was out there, but he ran slower at the pro day than he did at the combine. On my watch anyway, Kyren Williams. Slower at the pro day. Kyren improved on a slow track at the pro day, okay? Had a 38-inch vert, had a 10.5 broad. All his other numbers were very good for Audric Estime. And by the way, his film in 2023 was really good. In the NFL, despite him weighing 220-something pounds, said, nah, we don't care. We don't care. You're not that good. You're not that good. So I have a feeling, and I had a feeling about this with Kyren as well, Shaun, because I had Kyren rated much higher than a 5th-round pick that he was drafted. I had a feeling that Kyren Williams was going to make a lot of people look stupid, okay? I have a feeling that Audric Estime is going to make a lot of people feel really stupid in 2 to 3 years. I feel it in my bones. Now, the situation he gets into is a little bit of a crowded room, actually. It's not like an automatic that he's going to see a ton of time.
Williams is out there.
Javontae Williams, who has not quite lived up to expectation, but it's been partly injuries, but partly Denver hasn't been very good. So it hasn't all been just on him. But Javontae Williams, Samaje Perine, who's a very good situational player.
Good vet to learn from, though. Good vet to learn from.
Oh, yeah. Their games are actually kind of similar. I think Audric's a little bit more explosive short area, but Perine and his game are a little bit similar. Jaleel McLaughlin, who's a good change of pace, 3rd down type back. And then they also have Tyler Beatty, who came out of Missouri a couple years ago. So the depth chart's actually pretty solid. Audric will have to fight to potentially be a focus behind Javontae early on. But again, 2 to 3 years from now, I wouldn't be shocked if Audric Estime is a starting running back in Denver, and it just makes a lot of people look dumb. I feel like that trajectory could happen.
I agree. I think coach is going to fall in love with him.
Oh, yeah. I think so. Yeah. Because he just does everything. And the other thing too, Shaun, on top of him just kind of doing the little things right, great personality. And also, Audric's only 20. He's still 20 years old. There is developmental upside, man. Developmental upside for Audric. We're acting like he's a finished product. He's like 24 years old. He's a young cat.
With 1 year in college of being the bell cow.
Yep.
Like he's only had 1 year of being the bell cows.
Yeah, not a lot of tread. Not a lot of tread.
Plenty of tread left on his tires. Absolutely.
Less than 400 touches in his career, actually, Shaun, which is it's good for him long term. So Audric Estime picked number 147 to the Denver Broncos. We'll see if he's able to make the step. So make a step and be able to create a role in the Denver Bronco offense. So Shaun, again, that's Joe Alt, 1st round, Blake Fisher 2nd, Marist Liufau in the 3rd round, the lone player picked there. Then we had 3 5th-round selections. We had Cam Hart, J.D. Bertrand, and Audric Estime. Only 1 guy left, Shaun. So we were expecting. I was sitting there anxiously on the end of day 3 because I thought that there was an opportunity for both Javontae Jean-Baptiste and Sam Hartman to get drafted. I thought both of them had the opportunity to potentially do that. Only one of them did, and that was Javontae Jean-Baptiste, who went 7th round, number 222 overall, to the Washington Commanders, Shaun. First and foremost, was very happy to see Javontae get drafted because he did everything Notre Dame asked him to do this year, man. In his 1 year, I was very happy for the kid, first and foremost.
Isn't it amazing how everyone connected to Notre Dame in this draft seems like they made the right business decision? Seems like Blake Fisher made the right business decision. Javontae, most people didn't expect him to get drafted. I think he got drafted because he made the move from Ohio State to Notre Dame. Good business decision. And that's just that those are things that kind of flow downhill, right? You're happy for these kids, you're happy for them getting the opportunity in the NFL. But that bodes well for Marcus Freeman in Notre Dame. That's just something to put on your resume. You know, this is how many guys we got drafted. I think they might exceed that next year, you know, depending upon the guys who come out. So you have to be super excited to see a young man like him get an opportunity. And like you said, it depends on the structure of the team that he goes to and what he's going to be asked to do and what the depth chart looks like. But we've seen that this young man isn't afraid to work. We saw that from his 1 year in Notre Dame. Like, he's willing to put in the work to make himself better and to give whatever is needed from that team, because that's exactly what he did for Notre Dame this year.
So here's the depth chart that he's walking into with the Commanders, Shaun. They actually have a big need at defensive end. So they lost, obviously, Chase Young.
That's because they draft all defensive tackles. It's almost like they just go get the best defensive tackles.
Well, Shaun, but they also drafted Montez Sweat and Chase Young very early, and they got rid of both of them this past year, right? Yeah, well, Montez ended up playing pretty well for Chicago, man. He played pretty well for Chicago. So, but this is like the island of misfit toys, this defensive end room right now. Mm-hmm. So they signed 3 free agents this offseason, Shaun. Doris Armstrong from Dallas, also Dante Fowler Jr. from Dallas, and they signed Cleveland Farrell, former top round pick who played San Francisco this past year, was drafted by the Las Vegas Chargers. I think they were still the Oakland, Las Vegas Raiders. I said Chargers for a reason. Las Vegas Raiders, formerly the Oakland Raiders. Shaun, it's 3 names that we know. Yeah. Doris Armstrong was actually pretty good for Dallas, but we know Dante Fowler, he was a high round pick. Cleveland Farrell was a high round pick. But combined, those 3 together only had like 15 and a half sacks last year and 18 tackles for loss or something like that. Like, they weren't incredibly good. Okay. They weren't incredibly good, incredibly productive, I should say. Doris Armstrong, pretty good. The other 2, rotational pieces, right? Outside of that, their depth chart is KJ Henry, Andre Jones Jr., Jalen Harris, Josh Pryor, and Ife Obada, who I don't know. I don't know who that is. Javontae Jean-Baptiste, not a foregone conclusion to make the roster, but the way I look at it, Shaun, you're going to keep at least 6 defensive ends on the NFL level because you need depth there. Mm-hmm. He needs to beat out Ife Obada. He needs to beat out Jalen Harris, and he needs to beat out Joshua Pryor to make this roster potentially. I think he can. I think he can make the roster. What is his role year 1? Probably special teams if he makes the team, right? That's probably more the likely scenario for him. But is anybody counting out Javontae Jean-Baptiste to work? I feel like that dude's going to work, man. He's going to work.
Man, you know what? You keep talking about this and you talk about the Commanders. Look, the Commanders' entire staff, literally the entire staff was in South Bend. And I was sitting there, I remember texting you like, why are the Commanders and the entire staff here? Like, I mean, they just came with a 4-court press, right? I'm like, they wouldn't take Joe Alt, would they? Not at 2. Like, no, they're not going to take Joe Alt. But you see the fact that they got Javontae, and this just goes to the work that you put in as a scout. Because going to these pro days is not always about the top guy. Like, you standing there having conversations with each coach. When you're talking to Mike Denbrock, remember I told you he had a long conversation with Mike Denbrock. Is he asking him about Jaden Daniels? Probably so. But is he also asking him, well, what do you think about Sam Hartman since your time here? Have you been able to talk to him? Have you watched his film? It's a lot of things that you can get from having these conversations. You know everything that happened at the combine, and you see the Commanders come and grab Sam Hartman in free agency, and then to grab Javontae on the way out of it at the last part of the draft. That's scouting and putting your homework in and asking about guys. Because when you get to that point, it goes down to, I'll give you a great example, right? Competitive schools. And my daughter, when she applied for college, she applied to some pretty competitive schools, right? And she ended up going to USC. USC is highly competitive, right? Especially with the theater program. And it was literally the gentleman that came as a representative to her school her junior year where she had her first conversation, and then he came back and actually interviewed her. He literally fought for her in the room of applications. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
And that's like the scouting world when you get to like the 6th, 7th round. It probably happens in earlier rounds, but it's like there's at that point, there's so many area scouts probably arguing for their guy. Well, this is the guy I love, or this is the guy I love. And everybody's in there arguing, right? Who can win the argument? And days like the pro day, where Javontae Jean-Baptiste was probably an afterthought to a lot of Irish fans, right?
Sure.
But there were probably conversations with someone on that staff on that day about him. There were conversations about Sam Hartman on that day. So it just goes to show you, man. That's why I respected what Louis Riddick said at the end of the draft, when he showed all the respect in the world to all of the other people for teams around the league that go out on the road constantly, that will never be mentioned.
Yep.
But their work is seen firsthand, you know, on those 3 days. So just to point out that tidbit, man. And that's why even when you were with me on pro days and I'm texting back and forth, we watch those subtle things. Like, yo, you see that coach talking over there? You see that coach from that team talking over there? Because it's those subtle conversations that end up landing certain people in certain situations, right? So, like you said, what was the buzz during the Senior Bowl? Because Marist on his pro day didn't post what we thought he would post, but something happened. The Cowboys something happened. The Cowboys were impressed, I guess, down in Mobile, and I'm sure they had conversations. Man, I'm becoming more and more impressed as we follow recruiting and then get to follow these guys as they matriculate to the draft and the draft process. This is a lot. This never stops, bro. It never stops. I'm talking about next year has already started. Like, area scouts are already.
They've been out. They've been out. Yeah,
yes.
They've been out.
Yes.
Blesto and NFS have been out for months already, Shaun, because they go to the. So for people that don't know, one of the big services is Blesto. Like actually, I'll use NFS as an example because it's a little bit different. Well, actually, no, I'll use Blesto. So Blesto Scouts, Shaun, I think it's 5 teams make up Blesto Scouts. They each have scouts they put into kind of this one organization, and they go out to all the spring practices, and that's where we get the heights, weights, official measurements, and the spring grades and all that type of stuff. So yeah, man, they've been out for months. Those guys are working on next year's class months ago. Like it's a long process, man. It is not a short process. It's a tiring one, man. It's a tiring one. So yeah.
Tip of the cap.
Yeah. Yeah. So Javontae Jean-Baptiste, last player to be drafted by Notre Dame, that ended up being 7 players drafted, Shaun, for Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I wanted to go through, and then we have a super chat at the end. I know you had the topic that you wanted to hit on at the end, so we'll get to both those things. Just wanted to throw out, I'm just going to list some of the other players that signed contracts, undrafted free agent contracts, Shaun. Maybe just pick one that you think is a very interesting spot that you think could have some potential there, okay? So first and foremost, Sam Hartman was signed as a priority free agent by the Washington Commanders. He was given $225,000 guaranteed money, so the highest that anybody has been incentivized to sign with a NFL team. So he got a nice little payday there as a UDFA. Also signed Spencer Schrader, Indianapolis Colts, reunited. Well, not reuniting. Technically, he never played for, but being able to go over, obviously previous special teams coach in Notre Dame is out in Indianapolis. So that's an interesting little tidbit there. Los Angeles Chargers signed Thomas Harper, former Notre Dame nickel, who's listed as a safety by the Los Angeles Chargers. So we'll see if that's where they end up playing him potentially in camp. So he signed for a priority free agent deal. Also, we had Michael Vincent, Shaun, signed so he's getting a mini camp invite with the Indianapolis Colts. So he will be reunited with his former special teams coach there for a mini camp invite. Now, the designations, the differences here, priority free agents are the one, again, priority, right? Right after the draft, that's who's signing. That's the first guys that we want to bring into our organization, a lot more guaranteed money. UDFA, regular undrafted free agent, usually they come in after the draft, but they're usually on a much smaller pay scale of priority. And then mini camp invites, guys that are invited to come to camp, and if they impress, then maybe they'll get signed by that organization. So there's different levels of free agents versus priority free agents versus undrafted free agents versus mini camp invites. It's kind of how that hierarchy goes. I believe there was one more big one, Shaun. Let me make sure that there was one that I missed. Oh, here it is. Bo Bauer, Shaun. Bo Bauer got signed. What team was it? Was it the Commanders as well? I feel like it was the Commanders. I could be wrong about that. Let me pull it up real quick. I thought Bo Bauer got signed by the Commanders. Was that who it was? Man, I had it right in this thread somewhere, but now I'm missing it. Bo Bauer. I know he got signed. Yes, it was the Commanders. So Bo Bauer, 2023 NFL draft prospect. If you remember, Shaun, he was the one that had gotten, and obviously you know who Bo Bauer is, but he had gotten injured late into his season. And they were talking about potentially transitioning as to a long snapper. They were talking about, trying to do that arc, but he is signed. He was signed. I know he was at Pro Day this year. Commanders signed Bo Bauer as well. So is there any of those that have piqued your interest? The guy that you're kind of waiting to see what they were able to do in camp?
Commanders really did their due diligence on the Notre Dame roster. But Bo Bauer was at the Pro Day too, man.
Yep.
Thomas Harper.
Thomas Harper's an interesting one.
This goes back to what the conversation you and I were having during the Pro Day. I'm sending you his numbers. I'm proud too, because my numbers were kind of right there with the official numbers. I was like, okay, my watch is on point. But we're going back and forth, and I'm sending you the numbers, and you're like, really? I'm like, hey, man, I'm just as shocked as you. But the young man, he stole the day. He was definitely the star of the day at the Pro Day with his performance. And the first thing you said was, I didn't see that explosiveness on film.
Not like that, man. It was like 42-inch vert, right? Or something like that. It was a wild number. Yeah.
And I think it showed up in his 3-cone.
Yeah.
Like all of the other numbers were elite. And then his 3-cone was kind of like, I don't even know if it was average. It might have been below average. And I think that's where you see the translation or the transition doesn't happen on film. But, that's where someone falls in love with the Pro Day and says, there has to be something here. And this film it just wasn't lining up with what we saw today. So he's worth bringing in, right? It has to be something there. His film is okay. The explosiveness is absolutely amazing. We're not going to draft him, but hey, he's definitely worth a look as an undrafted free agent.
Yeah.
So
he's a very interesting player, Shaun, because I think that he's kind of in a weird bucket of played nickel, but I think his skill set does transition better to safety. I don't think he quite has the movement skills to be a full-time nickel that's going to play a lot of man coverage. So he's going to have to play safety a little bit, which obviously he knows the guy that's coaching defensive backs over there, right? Knows the safeties coach. His name's Chris O'Leary. So it's good for him as a defensive assistant with the Los Angeles Chargers to have that known commodity. The other one that's very interesting, Shaun, is Washington Commanders, right? Washington Commanders. Obviously, they drafted Jaden Daniels, but there's a need for a backup. There's a need. They traded Sam Howell this offseason. The Seattle Seahawks. Could Sam Hartman cling to a roster spot?
Well, it's not apples to apples, but what are you saying? This is RG3, Kirk Cousins all over again?
Man, I don't no. I wasn't saying that at all. No, I did not say that even slightly. You caught me off guard while I was trying to text someone real quick. No, it's nothing like that. But a backup role, can he stick? I mean, it's possible. Who knows?
Yeah. Those are the two guys that I think, I would say Sam Hartman and definitely Thomas Harper.
Yeah.
Are two very interesting UDFAs.
Yep. And I don't know the special team situation for Indianapolis, but obviously we'll have Spencer Schrader and Michael Vincent on a rookie mini camp for Vincent. So either one of those guys. I mean, obviously they know Brian Mason pretty well, right? Or at least one of them knows Brian Mason. So that'll be interesting to see.
Growing up, I wish someone had told me you could make some money for about 10 to 12 years if you can learn how to snap the ball for a punt and kicks.
There's a little bit more to that, a little bit more, just slightly more to that.
But that would have been a more realistic thing for me on the football field. Like, oh man, okay, let me let me learn this. I was skinny back then though. I don't think I would have been a good.
I wish I was skinny. Skinny sounds nice. Shaun, we had a super chat, and then I know you wanted to end us with a conversation, right? So we're going to go to Pete Weber first here. Pete says, and Pete, thank you so much for the super chat, man. It's very appreciated. Bowling legend, Pete Weber. So speaking of the draft, I saw a way too early mock draft that had Riley Leonard as a top 25 player for the 2025 draft. What's your opinion on that rise and draft? Shaun, I was going to start this next segment. We're talking a little bit about 2025 players on this one, right? I was going to start just a little bit.
I'll take it from one angle, and you will take it. I'll let you take the rest.
Okay.
Pete, I'm going to take that and say from your mouth to God's ears. Because if God hears that request, that means Notre Dame has had a really great season.
Oh, yeah.
I'm fine with that. Perfectly fine.
And do I think that it could happen? Sure. But I'll say this, Pete, and I want to start the conversation off here, and then we'll go a little deeper because you gave us a super chat, which means, you paid for the time here, sir, which we appreciate. Shaun, I hate, and I put this on Twitter earlier, I hate way too early mock drafts and big boards because 95% of the people that put them out, all due respect, have not done enough work to have a 2025 mock draft or a big board. They haven't done that work yet. When I put my first mock draft out every preseason, Shaun, it's like early August when I feel like I've done enough work to put a realistic mock of guys that I have watched film on and done enough information on and guys that I have a clear opinion on. And I'm not faulting the NFL draft analysts that are putting these out because you know why? Some of these platforms are like, hey, man, it's your turn for the early mock draft. Oh, okay, cool. And they just put a bunch of names out there, right? And happens every year. I don't like the process. It's very clickbait driven. It 100% is. Now, that being said, do I think Riley Leonard could be a top 25 player next year? Yeah, there's a reality. There is a reality that happens for sure. Would I have him in a top 25 mock draft right now? The answer is no. I wouldn't have him based upon what I've seen because he didn't play enough last year, Pete. I needed to see a full season. He's coming off an injury. He's got another injury happening right now, or at least a recurring issue with that previous injury. And I just need to see a little bit more. I mean, like by mid-season, could I see him being in a first-round mock draft from myself? Yeah, 100%. But right now, I would not have him in a first-round mock. I probably wouldn't. There are not many quarterbacks that I would, though, Shaun. I mean, honestly, like this situation, Pete, might be more a situation of we always know there's going to be a high quarterback demand, but also the quarterback class next year looks like it's kind of stink early on. That's what it looks like. Carson Beck, maybe is a guy from Georgia, looked pretty good at times. Shadur Sanders looked pretty good at times. I don't know if he takes that jump, but we're going to see. Let's be honest. We're going to see Quinn Ewers in the first round of mock drafts.
Mm-hmm.
Child, please, at this moment. Like, no, thank you. I'll pass on that.
If he holds off Arch.
Well, he'll hold off Arch, I think. But I'm not comfortable calling him a first-round player right now. The other one, Shaun, that I've seen, Drew Aller. Give me a break. Did anybody watch Drew Aller last year, man? Did anybody watch Drew Aller last year? He was awful last year. He was bad. Bad football player last year. So he should not be in a first-round conversation either. But there has to be quarterbacks in the first round, Shaun, unless it's a Kenny Pickett year where Kenny Pickett goes 20th and everybody else, no other first-round picks. I mean, that's always possible. But, yeah, there's some first-round quarterbacks right now where you're just like, bro, no. Like, not a chance. Not a chance.
No. There are 3 quarterbacks at Notre Dame better than Drew Aller right now.
Oh, that's a spicy take. That's a spicy take.
I'll stand on that. I'll take 3 of the minimum 3 of the 4 in the quarterback room over Drew Aller right now. Right. The Penn State coaching staff would too.
And the Penn State. Are you saying there's some tampering probably happening right now, Shaun? Are you saying there's some tampering right now?
I would dare not say anything like that on Irish Breakdown. I wouldn't put that.
You don't put that in the universe?
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
See, like Archer said that Cam Ward was in an early first-round mock draft. Hey, man, I'm more accepting of that than Drew Aller right now, though. Like, again, Cam Ward should not be a first-rounder either, but right now anyway. But I'm more accepting of that than Drew Aller. right now. I just am. I haven't
Next,
seen anything from Drew.
you know what? It is a dip because you come from this year, and there's a dip, and then I think you go back up in 26.
Right.
I think the 26 class jumps. I mean, we have to wait and see what Dante Moore does. We have to wait and see what the Vegeta kid in Arizona, what he does. There are some kids, that bear watching in their sophomore years that are going to be eligible the previous year. I think that quarterback class has a chance to maybe, like, does Carson Beck even come out?
He probably will. He'll have 2 years of starting experience at that
That's
point.
true.
He'll be past that dreaded 1-year starter label. He'll be done.
That's true.
Also, I wish Noah Fafita wasn't 5'9". That would be great if Noah Fafita wasn't 5'9", but he might be 5'9". But I do like.
Did I say Vegeta? What did I say? I think I said.
I think you said Vegeta, like Dragon Ball Z, but Fafita.
Yeah.
No, Fafita. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good player though. Really good college player. I don't know if he's an NFL kid, but very, very good college player. There's no doubt. So, yeah.
But no. Here it is. Please tell me.
Please
get the other super chat. Let's get the other super chat. So we don't forget.
All right. Well, Pete, appreciate it, man. We'll be talking about first round mock drafts, I'm sure, for the rest of the year. Again, all due respect to Jack Kaiser, Shaun, but there was a reputable, quote unquote, not actually reputable draft site that had Jack Kaiser in a first round mock like last year. So we'll chill.
You said, wow.
Yeah. Walter Football. Shout out Walter Football, who actually follows me on Twitter, which is kind of weird, but yeah. Next super chat. Andy Milton fan. Super chat. Thank you so much, sir. How are you, Nathan? If not injured, where is Jordan Travis drafted? What was Travis drafted? Fifth round, I think? 5th or 6th?
He probably goes around earlier.
Yeah.
Maybe late 3rd.
Yeah. He might go 4th or 5th, Nathan.
Yeah.
Look, man. Jordan Travis was a very good college football player the last 2 years. I think that he has a chance to stick potentially in the NFL as a backup, maybe a Tyrod Taylor-esque type of arc. But I don't think he was going to be much higher demanded. Like I never saw a day 2 football player from Jordan Travis. Pretty good though. It's a good football player. I mean, I should rephrase. Very good college football player. Average prospects. I mean, like I think 4th to 5th round was fair. I think that was fair for Jordan Travis. The bigger question is, what if Jordan Travis never got hurt for Florida State, Shaun? Then what would that conversation have been? Florida State was a very good team when Jordan Travis was playing. Unfortunately, things got derailed when Tate Rodemaker and Brock Glenn had to take over down the stretch. But yeah.
Then I think we would have had a very big argument in the committee room about who to leave out between Texas and Alabama.
Yeah.
Because the three undefeated teams had to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt.
Florida State, Michigan, Washington. They have to be in it. Now you have to tell Texas or Alabama, who won their conference championships, one of them, gentlemen, sorry.
You're out of here.
And Texas beat Alabama. So that probably would have been really simple.
Yeah. Yeah, the head-to-head was an obvious one.
Yeah. So that's the impact of Jordan Travis's injury. It saved the SEC, the new SEC, because they'll claim we had 2 teams in the playoff last year, counting Texas the year before they officially came to the conference.
Yep. And Nathan, it's not just a 5th round draft pick is gone. It was the quarterback of your team, brother. It was the quarterback of your team. It was Jordan Travis made the thing go, right? Like they had other good players, obviously, like Keon Coleman's very talented. Johnny Wilson got drafted. Trey Benson got drafted, but we saw the difference, did we not, Shaun? The difference between Jordan Travis and Tate Rodemaker or Jordan Travis and Brock Glenn, that was dire, man. That was a completely different team.
Maybe that's what ND Milton fan is kind of alluding to, is that, you should have somebody good enough to get you across the finish line with him being injured, right? It goes to the comfort level that we feel like, regardless of, we have our preference on who we would love the backup to be for Notre Dame.
Sure.
But with that backup, I feel comfortable. Going, if heaven forbid that Notre Dame's in that same situation, I don't think Notre Dame gets dinged the same way Florida State does.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't. Because I think people look at Notre Dame's roster and say, oh, well, they do have those two guys playing. So, yeah, maybe that's something that Norvell dropped the ball on, is making sure he had a backup.
Yeah, it's very possible. So I think that is, if anyone wants to throw in a late super chat, please throw it in. Please throw it in. But Shaun, there was something that you wanted to end this conversation with, so I'll give you the floor, sir.
I'll keep it quick and simple. Most
Yes.
people say that Caleb Williams is stepping into the best situation a number one overall pick has ever stepped into. Is he even stepping into the best situation in his own division as the quarterback?
Yeah, this is what you texted me about, right? This is what you texted me about. Yeah. I think so this is the Minnesota versus the Chicago Bears conversation, right?
This is not a JJ versus Caleb. This is play caller, offensive line, weapons, like, yo.
I think Minnesota is the better situation over Chicago slightly. But that being said, I do think that Chicago's a pretty good situation.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah. I mean, because you think about the pass catchers, right? It's like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet. They signed DeAndre Swift too, did they not? So like they got some weapons, right? They got some weapons there. So that's cool. Offensive line still needs work. I think it's okay. It's trending in a better direction than it once was. So I think it's okay. I think that it's a good situation. Like there's no doubt. But I do give the edge to Minnesota because Minnesota might not have a running back as good as DeAndre Swift, but they do have Justin Jefferson, who is.
Would take Aaron Jones over DeAndre Swift?
I mean, in a vacuum, if both healthy, yes, but Aaron Jones gets banged up a little bit, or at least he has the last couple of years. I know DeAndre Swift has a little bit, but last year DeAndre Swift was pretty dang good, man. He was pretty dang good for Philly last year.
Yeah.
But they have Justin Jefferson, who's fantastic, right? Really good player. Probably the best receiver in the NFL when healthy. I know he was banged up last year, but Shaun, he had 1,000 yards and only played like 8 games or something like that, 9 games or whatever. Like, all right, cool.
It's ridiculous.
Also have Jordan Addison, who's a very good number 2. Very good. And then when he gets back, I don't know if he's going to be available to begin the season, but it might be. TJ Hawkinson's very good tight ends, right? And then they have 2. I think they also have the better offensive tackle duo.
Man.
Yeah. Yes. Because they have Brian O'Neill at right, very good. Christian Darrisaw, a little bit injury plagued at times, but very good when he does play. So I think, and also here's the big separator though, because I think you could fight back either way.
Yeah,
I'll take Kevin O'Connell over Chicago's play calling situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I said it, just being objective. I'm just trying to be objective, right?
Yeah.
I don't love JJ McCarthy. But if JJ McCarthy had, for who he is, if he had a team to go to, it's like, okay, you went to the right team. I just watched this dude win 7 games with Josh Dobbs. And, and they lost the game to the Bears on Monday night that they should not have lost.
Yep.
Right. A late mistake by Josh Dobbs. And it's like, the magic he worked without his quarterback and number 1 receiver.
Yep. Shaun, and Christopher Hardy says we'll find out quickly if JJ can elevate a team and carry them. I don't think he has to on that Minnesota team. I don't think he has to. Yeah.
Caleb has to do that. JJ doesn't have to do that.
Yeah.
I think Caleb has to do that from a talent standpoint. He has to do that from an expectation standpoint.
Right.
He has to do that because the Vikings and the Bears had the exact same record.
Yep.
Last year. The exact same record.
I'm a big believer that eventually they will have to, right? So like, let's say in the ideal world, let's say Minnesota for their sake makes the playoffs and JJ's good, like a solid player for them, but he's a little bit more of a game manager like we expect that he probably will be, right? In the playoffs, I agree with you, Christopher. There is going to be a moment where JJ has to elevate. There's no doubt. But for the most of the season, though, I don't think he has to be an elevator at all. I think he just needs to be part of the machine and a good part of the machine. That's all I think he has to be.
So Kirk Cousins went to the playoffs and had Minnesota playing really well before his injury.
Yep.
Right? So let's just say the distance that JJ McCarthy needs to travel is a lot shorter than the distance Caleb Williams needs to travel.
Yeah.
Right? Because if he can just be Kirk Cousins, like if JJ could be Kirk, they're expecting Caleb Williams to be Pat. That's the expectation. Like, dude, he's the next Pat Mahomes. He's the next elite guy.
And the Bears need him to be that, Shaun, because
Absolutely.
Otherwise Matt Eberflus is probably going to be out, isn't
Absolutely.
he? I mean, like, he's got to be on a short leash.
He needs to be out. Oh, absolutely.
He has to be on a short leash because he's done nothing his first 2 years to make you feel solid about what he's doing. They brought in a new offensive coordinator. They went after the big quarterback. Like they have obviously been like, hey man, we need to upgrade the offensive side of the football. And if Matt Eberflus, if they don't do well this year at all, like let's say they go 6-11 or something like that, Matt Eberflus has to be gone, right? Like I don't think there's any situation where you look at him and be like, oh no, it's okay, Matt, you get another year. Like he's got to be gone, right? It has to be.
Matter of fact, Daniels might have gone to the worst. I'm glad. Oh man, Daniels might have gone at the number 2 pick. He might have gone to the worst situation.
Oh, I disagree. Because
when you start comparing like playmakers, situation, expectations, all this. Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about. I don't know.
New England, man. New England.
Oh, you're right.
Tough situation. You're right.
Drake, I actually like. Yeah, you're right. I can't even argue that.
Their offensive line is a major work in progress.
Yeah.
Their wide receiver position is bad. Like,
you're right. You're right.
It's not a great situation, man.
Yeah. But would you put Daniels like 4?
In the situation department?
Because this is how I would rank. I would put JJ 1, Caleb 2, Bo Nix 3 with Sean Payton. Mm-hmm. And then I would go Daniels, May. And I think 3 and 4 could be interchangeable.
It's funny. You're not even throwing Penix in there because it's just like, we're not going to see the dude for 4 years, so who cares?
I mean, well, his situation is not. I would expect Sam Darnold is probably going to start. Look, I'm looking at JJ as the starter. I don't even count Sam Darnold. It's like maybe he starts to begin the year, but eventually JJ's the guy. We know that. Mm-hmm. Kurt's going to play minimum 1 year if he stays healthy, 2 before his money starts to come off the books.
Yeah, they can get out of his contract pretty easily after 2 years. Is kind of the
so
there.
Even if you put Penix in there, I would say, well, hey, no, Penix might be 3. Man, I mean, a kid that can just go and sit and wait and get better and watch them build up because the talent is there offensively at the skill positions.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I'll say this, Shaun. I know that you're very down on the Chicago Bears organization, but whoever the next head coach is walking into some talent, man. There's got some talent on the roster. There's some talent there, man. There really is.
Has to be an offensive guy, though. Because I think they set up Justin Fields to fail. I think they're setting Eberflus up to fail. They're like, okay, you got 1 more year, right? And now it's like, if you don't win with this rookie quarterback,
right?
And we still haven't fixed the offensive line. Mm-hmm. If you don't win with this rookie quarterback, it's going to be on you and the defense.
Yeah. Right. And it's typically how teams do operate is that we just had a defensive-minded head coach. Let's go opposite. You rarely ever see a guy just say, like, let's go for a similar idea of how to build this roster the next year. I mean, that rarely ever happens. So, yeah. I think that is a very good point. I mean, we just talked about Minnesota, right? What did Minnesota do? They went from Mike Zimmer, old school defensive coordinator, to young, up and coming offensive mind Kevin O'Connell. Like that was the transition that they made, right? And we see that all the time. So see that all the time. Very interesting. I am actually incredibly curious to see how the quarterbacks play out in year 1. I just hope, Shaun, because I already know what's going to happen. Ready? You know what's going to happen? This is going to be a situation that we had a couple years ago where a quarterback's in a decent situation and then everyone loses their minds and says, oh man, all the JJ haters are idiots. It's going to happen, right? They're going to say it. Joao, JJ was good as a rookie. You know who else was good as a rookie and people were proclaiming him to be the best quarterback in his class ever his rookie year? Mac Jones. Michael McCorkle Jones was really good as a rookie. You know what happened though, guys? People got film on him. People found out about him. They saw his weaknesses, his tendencies, and he sucked. Okay? So let's not get over the top on rookie quarterback performance because we see that stuff happen all the time. You know who also stunk as a rookie, Shaun? Matt Stafford, Peyton Manning. Like a lot of really good quarterbacks were not very good as rookies. Yes. And for people that don't know, McCorkle is Mac Jones' middle name. That's where the Mac comes from. McCorkle. Michael McCorkle Jones. One of the worst names of all time. No doubt. I don't know why anybody thought that a guy named McCorkle would be a good NFL quarterback, but another conversation for a different day there, Shaun, I think. I think. Folks, we're going to preview 2025, Shaun. We got time for this, man. This is going to be a little bit more of a rapid-fire segment, guys, because we went over the time on this second segment, to be honest with you. But we're going to talk 2025, a little bit early look into some of the NFL draft prospects that Notre Dame has coming down the pipeline. Before we do, hit that like button, share this podcast, hit that notification bell to listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. Make sure 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Make sure you're subscribed over there. Boards.irishradio.com for the latest recruiting and team intel now that we are getting deeper into the offseason after spring ball. Appreciate you all. See you on the next segment here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Shaun, let's talk 2025 NFL draft prospects for Notre Dame potentially. Again, a lot of things are going to happen and change from now until next April. This is not going to be a linear ascension. There's probably going to be some ups and downs on these lists. But let's start offensive side of the football. And for people that don't follow Irish Breakdown routinely, Irish Breakdown right now has 2 articles up written by Brian Driscoll where he highlights the offensive and defensive potential prospects for next year's class. Shaun, let's go offense first. Okay, we're going to start there. I know probably people want us to start defense because we're going to talk about a guy that most likely is the most logical first-round pick for Notre Dame in 2025. But let's start offense here. The wild card, Shaun, the wild card. And we'll go through these names a little bit quicker because we don't know 100% who's even going to be in the class. But one guy that we know is going to be in the class because I don't think he doesn't have any eligibility left after this year. Riley Leonard, quarterback, transfer from Duke. Shaun, he was listed in mid-season before the injury started to derail early in the 2023 season as a first rounder by some NFL pundits. By Mike Mulcaper Jr. is one that had him as a first rounder. He is a wild card right now, Shaun, because first round talent, yes. First round production and film right now, not really, not consistently, right? And then he's got the injury stuff on top of it. So wild card, huge wild card. Riley Leonard, quarterback, Notre Dame. Some quick thoughts on him.
It's all on him, right? He has to feel like deja vu, like Groundhog Day. I'm living this all over again. This is the same first round buzz I had going into the season last year. If I can do this, if I can do that, I can end up possibly being a first round pick in the NFL draft at quarterback. And fortune probably smiled on him because if he had played and had a good season, Riley Leonard probably is the maybe 5th, 6th, 7th best quarterback in the class. I mean, it was a pretty thick class. It just was. Now he comes into a class where if he plays well at Notre Dame, which is a feather in your cap, yeah, the quarterbacks are very questionable at this point.
Yeah. So, next year class does not look great at quarterback, Shaun. Early on, does not look great.
So this could bode well for the young man. Yeah. You know, I wouldn't have him first round right now based upon everything you said. And even if he has a great season, I just don't know. It would be weird watching a draft where the quarterbacks actually get pushed down.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's going to happen. More than likely it won't happen. Mm-hmm. But that would be wild if you see the first 3 picks. And the next thing you know, no quarterback is off the board. It'd be weird.
You never know, man. You never know. And we had IGK in the chat saying stuff about JJ McCarthy, showing he didn't have proven production. You know what though, IGK? He's a winner, bro. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about, man. JJ is a winner. Absolute winner. What does he do well in the field? I don't know, but he's a winner, man. All he does is win. All he does is win, Shaun, no matter what. He's got money on his mind now, too. So that's what's up. Running quarterback, Riley Leonard. Want to talk briefly about some of the skill position guys, because we're going to kind of work that way, Shaun. The next guy that I think is most logical to be drafted, and I think would be drafted dependent upon injuries, is Mitchell Evans. I think he's the most likely one, right? Because I would argue that if Mitchell Evans didn't get hurt this year, Shaun, he's probably a guy that wrestles with the idea of going to the NFL in the 2024 NFL draft. Wouldn't you say? Like, I mean, he's probably wrestling with that decision. I think that that's very safe to say. So very curious on what Mitchell Evans' season's going to be, the production that he has this year, and if he's able to stay healthy, because he could be one of the better tight ends in the 2025 NFL draft class, but a lot is going to be dependent on the injuries and those concerns that are afforded with it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Mitch, and then after Mitch, we probably get to what? The wide receivers?
I think there's a bunch of wide receiver wild cards is the best way to put them, Shaun. Chris Mitchell, rumored to run in the 4.3s. That obviously sells. He has a nice year at Notre Dame.
Right.
Cool. Jaden Harrison is a special team stalwart, so that usually plays. Bo Collins, Jaden Thomas. I don't know what the hierarchy of those wide receivers are going to be this year, so it's kind of hard to project who is going to be the top draft prospects, because you just don't know what it's going to 100% look like. But you have to think that one or two might be sought after if they're in the NFL. It just depends on what the hierarchy looks like, man. I'm just not 100% sure. And also, is Jaden Greathouse the unquestioned number one this year, where he takes targets away from the four guys that we just mentioned? It really depends, man. Deion Colsey, I guess, is technically in that conversation, but obviously it's a wild card group of wide receivers, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. We could be talking about, this is crazy. They had 7 players drafted, and we could possibly be talking this time next year about 7 offensive players from Notre Dame being drafted if things go right. That's crazy. Just think about that. Yeah, and the wide receivers will be the wild card for sure.
Yeah. I don't even think it's that crazy, man. I just think it's possible. Like it's gonna be weird to think about. I mean, I honestly don't know what to make of the wide receivers for Notre Dame next year. Shaun, same thing. Offensive line. Notre Dame always has an offensive lineman, right? I would say the guards are worth taking a look at. I mean, Billy Schrout's a younger guy, but he's going to be draft eligible this year, right? Does he have a tremendous year where he makes the jump? I have no idea. Rocco Spindler, big body mauler. I think some NFL teams will dock the athleticism, right? But does he have a huge year if he's a starter over Pat Coogan? And then I guess the other guy that you have to mention is Tosh Baker. I mean, Tosh Baker, whether he's bad, good, or somewhere in between this year, Shaun, if he starts at offensive tackle the entire year for Notre Dame, he's going to get a look. Like, there's no doubt about it that he's going to get a look. So offensive line is another one that I think is just a little bit of a wild card, man. A little bit.
Totally agree.
And then the last one, here's a wild card for you, Shaun. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Running backs. You love to have guys that are a little bit of low tread runners on the next level. I'll tell you a guy that could have a big year that might have a decision. We'll see. I don't know because he's had an injury in the past, but would it shock you if Jadarian Price has a huge year where you have to make a decision? I mean, like, decision could be made.
With everything he's going through physically at Notre Dame, you darn right. That is, sky's the limit. That's what you reach for.
That's what you
ball out, go to the league, man. Jeremiah, it's all yours, bro. It's all yours, right? So yeah, that would be fantastic. If Jadarian has a good year, he's going to be in that same 3rd, 4th round range.
Yeah.
He already showed the special teams capabilities last year, the kick return against USC that flipped the game. If he comes out and becomes what Audric was to Logan 2 years ago, in a sense, not style, I'm just talking about just being that 1A, 1B punch at the running back position. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one can fault you. Who I would hope no Notre Dame fan would say, if he stays another year, he could possibly go in the second round. Like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, the kid is trying to be healthy, man. He's trying to get the most out of
Yeah.
his abilities.
Shaun, it rarely ever works out where a running back goes back to school for another year and they end up
Yeah.
going higher. That rarely ever works out. I mean, I would say even Shaun, I believe this is true, my opinion. Blake Corum probably would have been a late third round pick if he would have came out even with the injury coming out of Michigan in 2023 NFL draft compared to where he
Yeah.
went in 2024. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
one, it's the position, the appreciation, and then also the extra year of mileage is a little bit of a negative on you at some point, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. But I definitely think that there's something to be said about running backs. If you can leave as quick as possible, if you're ready, there's something to be said about that. I do. So we'll see. Jadarian's a little bit of a wild card. Want to get over to defense, Shaun. Again, we're doing, guys, this is a really brief dive. We'll be doing a lot more deeper dives on this, obviously, into the season and when players have a decision in the next draft season. If you love the draft content, at Rise and Draft on Twitter, by the way. Quick plug there for some reason. I don't know why. Defense. Let's talk defense, Shaun. There's a couple defensive backs that are on the early conversation of draft prospects in 2025 for Notre Dame. The first one, IGK. I'm sorry. People are giving me IGK. Maybe Audric would have went the same time next year, right? His production wasn't getting any better. At the end of the day, he was depreciated because of the 4.71. Like, let's call it what it is, right? Defense, though, Shaun. Benjamin Morrison. Talk about those first round centric mock drafts this time of year, early 2025 NFL mock drafts. I hate them, but we've already talked about them a little bit. Benjamin Morrison's going to be in like every single one, Shaun. Two corner names that I would say are probably going to be the top two on every early mock draft. Will Johnson from Michigan, Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame. I would love to hear your perspective. I actually am kind of in between on Benjamin Morrison as a draft prospect right now. I'm a little in between, a little bit. I think he's very talented cover man. I think his change of direction is good. I think he's competitive. The play strength worries me, though, a little bit. It does. Play strength worries me a little bit. I'm not saying he won't be a first-round pick, and I'm sure he probably will end up being one potentially, but I'm just saying, like, it's not like a foregone conclusion. I'll put it like this, Shaun. I know Notre Dame fans are going to hate this. They're going to hate it, okay? They're going to hate it, but I'm going to say it because I believe it. If Will Johnson decides to opt out this year, he's a first-round pick. I'm not sure the same for Benjamin Morrison. I'll put it out that like that. That's the best I'll say. Your perspective, though, on Benjamin Morrison as an early draft prospect.
We saw this coming 2 years ago. And the only thing that's going to stop him, I think, it's fair. Like, at this point, you can sit, you can debate. It's fair that Will Johnson is ahead of him on boards right now. It's fair. Just measurables, what we expect him to be able to run, his film, what he's shown. I think the film is even. I think what separates them is that Will Johnson is just bigger and probably runs just as fast as Benjamin, right? So now you're just talking about scheme, coaches, who they prefer. Benjamin might actually be higher on someone else's board than Will. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see how the season plays out. I'm very excited, man. I cannot wait. You talk about matchups. I cannot wait because I already know Michigan is going to struggle offensively and compared to what heck, their offense wasn't exactly the most explosive last year. I mean, they physically just overpowered the Big Ten. But I'm excited to watch this Michigan defense. I think this Michigan defense is gonna have a chip on their shoulder. And I think they feel like they have a lot of talent, man. Their second stringers are going to be first and second rounders in the draft coming up, bro. Like, hello, they're probably like, hello, we're still here. And Will Johnson, Kenneth Grant, the kid that came from Coastal Carolina, like all of those guys, man. I can't wait to watch them match up against Texas. I can't. In the big house. I can't wait. I could care less about who wins the game. I want to watch Sark versus that defense and who Will Johnson takes away. Which receiver does Michigan say, yo, take him away and we'll rock out with the rest of them? It's just one of those matchups I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I can see it, man. Definitely. I mean, it's the best part of college football, man. That type of matchup. Those player versus players.
Ben's the first round. Ben's the first round pick, man.
He's first round
I mean,
talent. There's no
yeah,
doubt. I agree on that
he should be a
100%.
first round pick.
Yep. I'm interested to see how much the play strength takes a step forward there. Xavier Watts, Shaun, I'm interested to see how the NFL views Xavier Watts. Because I think Xavier Watts is incredibly instinctive, really good ball skills.
Mm-hmm.
Tackling needs to improve, impacting the run game overall. And I think he's a good athlete, but is he a great athlete? Not sure from NFL standards if he's a great athlete,
Because
but
he wasn't a burner as a wide receiver. So
no, he was more a short area explosive guy than he
yeah.
is a long speed guy. But he has to be one of the top safeties coming back though for next year's class. Right now, I'm just interested to see, how high can he get, right? Like if he has another great year, improves the tackling, can he be a second rounder? Or is he more in the third, fourth range that he probably is right now? Like that's the question that I have. I'm gonna be interested to see.
I think he can creep mid third, possibly back in a second.
It's possible.
With a great year, he can creep up there.
Yeah, I think so. The other, two wild cards. Rod Hurd, we haven't seen in Notre Dame uniform yet. He has some production at Northwestern. If he's a starting safety, does he get a chance? He's probably going to get a look. We also have Jordan Clark, who is Ryan Clark's son, playing the nickel this year for Notre Dame. Both those kids are 6-year seniors, so they'll be a part of the 2025 NFL draft class. Are they more Thomas Harper? We're talking about PFA types, or are they late round potential guys? We'll see. We don't really know that as of today. Jack Kaiser's the lone guy on the second level, Shaun, the mainstay of that group. And we've talked about the excitement of linebacker. Linebacker is incredibly young, though, right now. We'll be talking about Drake Bowen down the road. We'll be talking about KVA down the road. We'll be talking about some of these guys down the road. But as of today, Jack Kaiser is the only draft eligible. Well, he's the one guy that we know is going to be in the draft. If Jalen Snead has a bonkers year, could he be in the conversation? Sure, but that's massive projection right now. We have no idea what Jalen Snead is going to be on this football team. But we do know Jack Kaiser's going to be in there, Shaun. I still think he's more of a late round type of kid than a mid round guy, but special teams upside, awesome, right? Special teams upside special teams baseline is really good, and he's played a lot of football in Notre Dame. So I think NFL teams will value that. It's just a question of how high they'll value it.
The second level, like you said, questionable. If I had to bet on Snead right now, I bet him coming out 2 years from now rather than next year. Jack, he just doesn't have the production. It hasn't played middle for 3 years like JD.
Yep.
So that perception is a little bit different, even though he has played alongside JD.
Right. This year could be big for Jack, to your point, Shaun, because he's played rover, which is kind of an obsolete position in the NFL. We call that a Sam linebacker, and you don't play a lot of base anymore. But if Jack plays well at will linebacker, that's going to improve his draft stock, because then a team's going to be like, okay, now I can see exactly what you're going to play in our defense. It's not a projection anymore. So
yeah.
And then we expect Jack to test pretty well. So if he has production, it's possible. He's a possible draft pick. I think he's a possible draft pick is the best way to put it.
Well, heck, that's the same thing we said about JD. We're like, oh man, UDFA back in and 3 years of production and being a captain and a leader and the
care about it,
connection
man.
and Al Golden's professional defense. Let's not skip over that. Playing in a highly NFL caliber defense and being the main guy in the middle of that, very impressive to a lot of teams in the NFL. So, and then we moved to the defensive line. You already know what's waiting there as far as the NFL. So.
Well, let's start with the defensive end, and we'll end it with the D tackles, Shaun, because I feel like those guys deserve it, man. They deserve it. They deserve it. Defensive end. We obviously have RJ Oben, who transferred over from Duke, who was getting some mid-round grades this past draft, Shaun, but decided to go back to school to strengthen his draft profile. And then Jordan Botelho is like a sneaky guy. I don't really know what to expect from that perspective. Like, I don't know what to expect from Jordan Botelho. But I think RJ Oben's a draft pick. There's no doubt. He has enough cornering speed. He's explosive. He's got good length to him. I think RJ Oben's a pretty safe draft pick.
The fact that his bloodline, it was like, I think it was, what I was watching. I'm like, his father did play tackle for the Giants for a long time. Like, okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's got the NFL bloodlines. Shaun, I saw RJ Oben. I don't think I've ever said this on the channel. When I was still coaching track here in Jersey, I was doing winter track, and we used to go up to New York to I forget what that place was called. I forget what it was called, but we used to go up to New York for track meets, like the weekend track meets. And I saw RJ Oben at the time because he was a South Jersey guy, right? And Shaun, he was a well-built kid at that point. We'll just leave it at that, right? So
Yeah.
kid's a very impressive looking athlete. And the NFL bloodlines, I think, definitely strengthens his case. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. It is going to be, and for him and Botello, it's put up, shut up time, right?
Oh,
But I think
for
they have,
Jordan? Yeah,
yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. But Jordan's in a very similar, I think he might have a little bit further. Yeah, his distance to travel might be more than Marist this time last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't think he's flashed. I don't think Marist had flashed. Like we were still figuring out sometimes, like Marist, where you're going, but Marist was flashing, make plays. Jordan is almost like we're still waiting.
Yeah.
We're still waiting. But he's had a once again, he's been having good springs.
Yep.
So
He
that's
has.
not the
He
problem.
always has good springs, man. He always brings you back in spring, doesn't he?
Mhm.
Always brings you back in spring.
Always brings you back. So he's like the flowers. They always come back during the spring.
And then let's end it with the interior defensive lineman, Shaun. Then we had a super chat in here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Riley Mills, Howard Cross, two very different players, Shaun. Very different. Howard Cross is the undersized 3 technique that some teams are going to look over because of length and size, but he's very productive. Riley Mills is the tall, long, athletic-looking interior defensive lineman that's played some defensive end that doesn't have quite as high production as you would want for his talent level perspective. I think both players will get drafted. The question is how high. I could see a world where Riley Mills climbs to being a 3rd-round pick, or I could see a world where Riley Mills is a 7th-rounder. Like, there's a wide gap. I think no matter what, this is my take, no matter what, Howard Cross is going to be a 4th to 5th-round pick. I don't think he can climb as high as Riley Mills, but I also don't think that he's going to dip as low as Riley either because his production's been better. Just kind of my thoughts on it.
Does Riley Mills remind you of someone? He reminds me of like a Brett Kiesel from back in the day.
Man, he is like a Steeler throwback, isn't he?
Yes.
Brett Kiesel, Kimo von Allerhoffen. Like, there's been a lot of those guys, man. Yeah.
I think, is Kiesel coaching now for the Steelers?
I'm not sure, man. I feel like there's more and more former players that keep popping up as coaches, though. I feel like I keep seeing names. Yeah.
But no, he reminds me of those type of guys that are really valuable, right? Depending upon the system, whether or not you go 3-man front, 4-man front.
Yep.
You know, definitely. And he's played outside, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he could definitely play big end if we need him to play big end. And he could definitely play on the interior. And then Howard is just going to be definitely on a defensive line that wants to be gap intensive, getting upfield, penetrating. Yeah.
So we'll see, man. Again, I love Howard Cross as a player, Shaun, but I do think there's going to be some NFL teams that are going to see the heights and the length, and they're going to be a little bit hesitant and skeptical. But I think there's stay power in the NFL level. There's no doubt. Yes. So I can see him being a mid-rounder. I think Riley Mills is going to be such a volatile player. I'll give some insight out there. But, Shaun, I know there are a lot of people with 7th to PFAs on Riley Mills this past cycle if he would have went out. It's like he was not a foregone conclusion to get drafted just because he needs to be more productive. He's too talented to not be more productive. That's just flat out what it is. So we'll see. And we also had a super chat to end us here, Shaun, and we'll get out of here. Lucky Ducks 512. Thanks so much, Lucky Ducks. Said, and I'm going to ask you this question first, Shaun, and then you fill out with me here, okay? How happy would you be with a 225 class if they kept everyone they could have and they add Derek Meadows, Taylon Taylor, or Javon Boggs, Mark Zachary, Madden Feriamo, and Jadon Blair?
How would I feel?
How happy would you be?
It depends on how the season goes.
Is that it?
Yeah, I'm going to be happy either way.
Okay.
But if the season doesn't go the way I feel, it probably would temper it just a little bit. Like,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yo, I mean, are you kidding me?
It's best secondary class in the country if that happens first and foremost.
And we expect that's a real possibility, like we talked about.
And Shaun, if they get Madden Ferriamo to go with Anthony Sack and Josiah Kia, that's another great linebacker class, right? Great linebacker class. And if you get Derek Meadows and you get one of Talon Taylor, Javon Boggs, I'll even throw Nuke Hines in here, right? Because I love Nuke Hines a lot. If you get Derek Meadows and one of those guys, I've been very harsh on wide receiver recruiting in 2025, but I'll take a step back there because that would mean in that scenario that Mike Brown, who's had some questions about him from a recruiting perspective so far, if he's able to land Derek Meadows and one of those other three, I got nothing for you, brother. You got it. Good job. Love it. I'd be so happy about it. My next question, though, Lucky Ducks, if you want me to be elated, though, if Notre Dame could get in with some good defensive linemen late, maybe, and surprise some folks there, that would take my excitement from very high to elated, but I'd be very happy with that class. I think that would be an excellent class, no doubt. All right, well, Shawnee, I think that's going to end it for us today. I want to thank everybody so much for joining the show today. A lot of content. Really hope you all enjoyed it. Before you go, you could just hit that like button for us. It'd be very appreciated. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and hit that notification bell. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, or anything in between, make sure you hit a 5-star review. That is always appreciated. Go sign up at boards.com. You want further recruiting and team intel of your favorite Notre Dame football team, make sure to go and sign up there today. That is Shaun Davis, co-host of the Lucky Lefty podcast and a recruiting insider here at irishbreakdown.com. I am Ryan Roberts. Thank you all. Hope everybody has a great day. Stay cool, and we'll talk to you again very soon here on the Irish Breakdown podcast.